Chapter 1971. In the sky above Paradise Island, the blood-red sword light was like a laser beam, easily slicing through Hai Ping's face. However, it was unable to touch the young man with blue-brown eyes. "You are quite good at dodging." Su Zijuan suddenly stopped and said with a smile of disdain, "No wonder this stupid club is so tolerant. After I destroyed so many of their branches, they still didn't do anything. It seems like it has something to do with the source." The young man with multicolored eyes smiled and said, "If it can calm down the princess of the Xianyuan royal family, I can destroy more branches." Su Zijuan sneered and said, "I can probably calm down after I destroy your branch as well." "That works too," the young man with multicolored eyes said coldly. Su Zijuan was stunned. The young man with multicolored eyes said calmly, "However, I have to evacuate the people on Paradise Island first. After one day, if you want to sink this island or tear it apart, it is up to you. I think it is a waste of time." Su Zijuan shook her head and reached out with her hand. She grabbed a lightning bolt from the thunderclouds and threw it into the blood-red sword in her hand. Instantly, the blood-red sword shone brightly. Blood-red flames and lightning flames appeared on the blood-red sword at the same time. The sword suddenly became more than 10 meters long. The young man with multicolored eyes, the fool, sized her up and said, "It seems like the princess's power has increased a lot. After all, you have provided me with food along the way." Su Zijuan sneered and released the power of the blood-red lightning flame sword. The seawater around Paradise Island started to surge. "The fool," said calmly, "the princess didn't eat much when she was still in Kelowna. However, after leaving Kelowna, she ate as much as she wanted. Drought demons and vampires really share the same origin. The more blood they drink, the more power they accumulate. Back in the Divine Land, your highness was malnourished, wasn't it? Otherwise, the divine generals of my club wouldn't have hurt you so easily. You know quite a lot." Su Zijuan suddenly narrowed her eyes. Logically speaking, the fact that she had been malnourished in Kelowna shouldn't be known by too many people. Those who knew were basically the core members of the Xianyuan Palace. "I've been observing. Most of the time, it's for the sake of observation." The fool smiled and said, "Legend has it that the wrath of Hanba, one of the corpse ancestors, can turn 1,000 miles into scorched earth. I'm also interested in experiencing it." "I'll let you experience it." Su Zijuan's cold smile disappeared. In an instant, the entire Paradise Island was engulfed in blood-red flames. The high temperature instantly evaporated the sea, and an endless amount of water vapor shrouded the entire Paradise Island. At that moment, Su Zijuan pierced her sword into the heart of the fool in the midst of the boiling white fog. Seeing that the blood-red lightning fire sword was about to pierce through the fool's chest, Su Zijuan suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. The fool made his move. He pointed his finger at the tip of the blood-red lightning fire sword. Something opened from the fool's fingertip, and it looked like a mirror. Then, the mirror suddenly shattered. Su Zijuan was shocked. Along with the shattering of the mirror, her sword of thunder and fire was also shattered. It was the space. It was a small-scale space shattering. The princess of the Xianyuan royal family immediately let go of the blood-red lightning fire sword in her hand, and moved back a dozen steps. "Very powerful." The fool rubbed his fingertip. "But it seems like the princess is still restraining herself, and didn't completely let go of her appetite. It seems like the food doesn't suit your taste?" Su Zijuan didn't say a word. She just sized up, or rather, calculated. The fool said calmly, "I roughly know the limit of your power in this world. Why don't you let me see the true power hidden in the princess body?" Su Zijuan suddenly laughed coldly. Then, she suddenly dove into Paradise Island. She raised her head and roared. Those white-clothed warriors on the surface of Paradise Island, whether they were still able to move or injured, all exploded. The blood that gushed out instantly turned into a blood-red tornado. At this moment, Su Zijuan opened her mouth, and that huge blood-red tornado directly rushed into her mouth. "Since you asked me to let go of my appetite, I won't hold back." After the blood-red fog was completely swallowed, Suzy Juan's eyes instantly turned blood-red. The blood-red energy even covered her body with a blood-red robe. Suzy Juan waved her hand. A stream of blood shot out from her fingertip and turned into a huge blood-red axe. Her surging power instantly increased by a lot. The fool said calmly, "If the princess continues to eat without limit, it will be very dangerous. But I'm afraid the princess won't be able to bear it. You'd better use your true power. Jiuzhou Xianyuan, the power of the god-killing sword. I still want to experience it. After all, this is the only special product that exists in this world." At this moment, the blood-red axe suddenly appeared in front of the young man with heterochromatic eyes. At this moment, Suzy Juan had already crossed the distance between them. It was as if she had directly traveled through space. When the blood-red axe was close to his forehead, the fool's eyes narrowed. The blood-red axe chopped down and instantly split the fool's body in half. However, Suzy Juan frowned at this moment. She didn't feel anything. Instead, at this moment, Suzy Juan felt something extra in her mouth. "Bread. Does it taste good? I baked it myself." At the same time, the fool's voice came from behind her. Suzy Juan's face turned cold. She instantly turned around with the axe in her hand, but at this moment, the fool pointed his finger again. Suzy Juan felt like her whole body was pulled into a narrow, different space. Then, the narrow, different space directly shattered, and instantly, countless terrifying tearing forces began to tear her body apart. Bang! The sound of a mirror shattering sounded. Suzy Juan's body instantly fell. Her body was full of wounds. She finally hit her head on the scorched earth. Bang! She struggled to open her body. There were hundreds of tiny cracks on her arms at this time. These cracks were healing under the effect of the powerful drought demon's physique. But it was unusually slow. The foreign force left in the wounds was preventing her from healing. The blood-red light in Suzy Juan's eyes disappeared and returned to the ordinary black eyes. A slight sound of falling to the ground came. She looked up and saw the fool standing not far in front of her. Suzy Juan suddenly chuckled. The fool asked curiously, "Your Highness, is there something dirty on my face?" Suzy Juan laughed. After laughing, she struggled to stand up. "I didn't expect that there was a guy like you in this world. That dragon is probably half as strong as you." The fool shook his head. "As far as I know, as long as I'm in Kelowna, I'll definitely lose. Because it's not only the power of the earth, but also the power of the belief of the largest race in this world. Unless this race disappears and that land also dries up. Your idea is very dangerous." Suzy Juan sighed slowly, but she seemed to be a little hesitant. The fool said indifferently, "Since your Highness doesn't want to draw out your god-killing sword, then your Highness, please stay in the club for the next time." "You want to see my hidden power, don't you?" Suzy Juan said coldly. The fool said expectantly, "After all, it's difficult for the club to enter Kelowna if there's nothing special. Let alone explore one of the top powers in Kelowna." "I'll fulfill your wish," Suzy Juan suddenly said with an expressionless face. Then, she closed her eyes and stood motionless in the same place. The fool waited quietly and whispered, "It's said that this is the godly sword of Kelowna. I wonder how much power it can use after leaving Kelowna." After a while, Suzy Juan suddenly opened her eyes and smiled. "Well, here's what you want to see." Suzy Juan's hands were empty, and she didn't even use the remaining power. She just stood there like an ordinary injured little girl. There was no god-killing sword at all. But Suzy Juan was smiling with squinted eyes. The fool frowned as if he had sensed something. He turned around and saw a man wearing a clown mask. "4 ancient tombs. Beat this bastard until he cries." The princess of the Xianyuan royal family snorted. "Go, profiteer beast. Do you really think Suzy Juan wants to summon the god-killing sword?" "Wrong. She wants to summon the boss Luo of the shop. I, Su Zijuan, am rich. Super rich. The fool opened his mouth slightly, and his heterochromatic pupils contracted violently. Then, he moved his shoulders, and the space fluctuated. However, with just a slight movement, the fool's body was instantly pressed into the ground as if countless gravity magic spells had superimposed on it. His body was buried so deep that he couldn't even lift his head. Miss Zijuan, I didn't agree to this deal. The clown mask, Boss Luo said calmly. 4 tombs aren't enough, I'll add 2 more. The princess snorted, I'm rich. Boss Luo couldn't say anything. So far, Su Zijuan was his biggest financial backer, not counting the potential ones. If you want to make this gentleman cry, I'm afraid that emptying your inventory won't be enough. Boss Luo suddenly reminded, even before his soul disappears, this gentleman won't cry. That's a dog. Su Zijuan's eyes widened. She pursed her lips and pointed. Then I'll cripple him. I'll kill the rest myself. That's easy, but this one. Boss Luo smiled casually. 6 tombs, just enough. As he spoke, the fool, who was pressed into the ground, was pulled out of the ground. The fool's face was stained with dirt. But he didn't panic. He even asked curiously, if I cry now, will this deal be considered complete? Boss Luo said calmly, I'm afraid that you'll have to confirm with Miss Zijuan. After all, she's the buyer. We, of course, will respect the customer's first wish. I see, the fool nodded and suddenly smiled. I've gained a lot today. At the very least, I've experienced this power that I can't resist at all. I'll give my life to you as a gift for our first meeting. Then, under Su Zijuan's incredulous gaze, the fool's body shattered bit by bit. In the end, nothing was left. Su Zijuan was furious. Profiteer, didn't I say that I'll kill the last one? I won't pay more. I'm afraid. Boss Luo shook his head and said, I'm going to refund you, Miss Zijuan. He chose to self-destruct. I didn't do anything. He did it himself? Su Zijuan opened her mouth. Why is he so stubborn? If there's nothing else, I'll go back, Miss Zijuan. Boss Luo suddenly said, Oh right, if there's a similar request next time, please inform me in advance. I've just changed my clothes and I'm going to sleep. TSK. Su Zijuan turned her head and stomped her feet as if she was venting her anger. Instantly, the surface of Paradise Island trembled. Su Zijuan didn't stop stomping her feet. She stomped on the ground again and again, causing the ground to shake even more violently. Boss Luo suddenly said, There's no one down there anymore. Miss Zijuan, are you planning to bury this place? No one? I think they've all moved away before you came. Boss Luo smiled and said. Rich Su Zijuan said without hesitation, Where did they move to? How much is it? I'll pay. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Currently, all the seats in the clubhouse are moving with their subordinates. There's no fixed location. They're moving separately. Of course, I can predict where they'll end up, but Miss Zijuan will have to pay an extra prediction fee. How much? Since it's a peek into the future, 3 ancient tombs per seat. Since Miss Zijuan is a regular customer, this is the most honest price I can offer, Boss Luo said seriously. Su Zijuan opened her hands and counted her fingers. There were 26 seats in the clubhouse. Excluding the fool who just self-destructed, there were still 25 of them. How many tombs was 25 multiplied by 3? The princess of the Xianyuan royal family looked at her toes subconsciously. After a while, her expression changed slightly. She snorted and said, Forget it. There's no point in crippling them in one go. I'll just play with this clubhouse slowly. I want a list of the real identities of all the people in the 26 seat. Is that okay? Since she had already started spending money, it didn't matter. Su Zijuan was different from Long Shirua in this aspect. She obviously wanted to spend all the money in the Xianyuan royal family. Boss Luo left. After he left, A list of names floated in front of Su Zijuan. The princess of the Xianyuan royal family glanced at it and frowned. Gongsun Xiu. Damn you. Chapter 1972. After Boss Luo put down the list and left, Su Zijuan didn't leave Paradise Island immediately. She still didn't want to give up. She went underground to see if all the people in the club had left. That was what she thought. If one of them stayed, it would be a huge gain. If two of them stayed, it would be a huge gain. If there were 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them, it would be a huge gain. What a loss! The underground facilities of the entire clubhouse had collapsed because of her stomping on the ground. Not only that, not even a lab rat could be found, let alone a living person. However, such a huge facility, the base of the Michael Club, couldn't be moved in such a short time. In other words, the relocation of the club had been done before she arrived. In the end, only the group of white-clothed warriors remained. They were more like cannon fodder. The fool might have purposely left them here so that Su Zijuan could have a large amount of ready-made human blood to devour. If they didn't know that I was coming, what could have caused them to leave? Su Zijuan couldn't help but fall into deep thought. If one were to ask why, she had a vague guess in her heart. It was most likely because of the incident that happened yesterday, which was an unforgettable and terrifying event for all transcendents and inhumans in the world. 10 black minutes. In the end, Su Zijuan couldn't figure out the exact reason. However, this time, she directly destroyed the club's base and even summoned the boss beast to force the fool to self-destruct. In the end, she even got a list of the members of the club. Su Zijuan's anger from the grudge she had with the club that day had mostly dissipated. For now, let's go back. She looked at the list of the 26 seats in the club and pondered for a moment. Then, she directly flew up into the sky. Gongsun Xiu's name was on the list. Although that profiteer was unscrupulous, he wouldn't perfunctorily add a dead person's name. That meant that Gongsun Xiu was still alive? As for the residents of Paradise Island, who were taken in by the Michael Association as their followers, she did not care about them at all. All the tools used to go out to sea on Paradise Island had been destroyed, so these residents could not leave and could only fend for themselves. Even though the lightning on Paradise Island had been extinguished, more than half of the land had been charred. The god on the other side of the mountain that the islanders prayed for had died. They all knelt on the ground and cried in despair. The entire Paradise Island was shrouded in a sorrowful atmosphere. At this moment, a child lost a family member who had grown up with him in the chaos. She helplessly fell to the ground and kept rubbing the tears from her eyes. "Why are you crying? Are you hungry?" Suddenly, a voice appeared in front of the child. She subconsciously opened her eyes. In her blurred vision, she saw pure white feathers slowly falling from the sky. Feather after feather finally landed beside her. As the feathers swirled in the air, a young man with heterochromatic eyes suddenly appeared in front of her. The young man was carrying a basket filled with various kinds of bread that seemed to have just been baked. At this time, it was still emitting an alluring sweet smell. The little girl was completely stunned. She stared blankly at the young man's beautiful gem-like eyes. She opened her mouth and wanted to scream. However, the young man made a shushing gesture and placed the basket in front of the little girl. He smiled and said, "The fool in this world is no longer here, and I'm not him. You're free now." "You are, Bai Ji." The young man said softly, "My name is Bai Ji." "Bai Ji." The little girl murmured this name. "You don't have to remember it. Forget it if you want to." The young man's figure slowly faded in her eyes. In the end, other than the basket filled with bread, there was nothing in front of her eyes. In the strange silence of the world, a new day had arrived. At the same time, it was also the third day of the World Summit. It was also the second day of the real agenda. The number of views of the global live broadcast was even more than the first day. Humans, transcendents and inhumans from all over the world, were looking forward to something or were afraid of something while waiting for something. It won't appear today. He has already said that it will only happen once. It's a one-time reminder. Even so, they still couldn't help but look forward to it, feel nervous and fear. Therefore, on the third day of the meeting, the events in the morning were all in this atmosphere. The remaining transcendents who had not yet made their reports were completed. There was no excitement. Everything was transitioned in a dull manner. Then, it soon ushered in the second topic of the meeting. The meeting in the afternoon would introduce an ancient race to the world. A city. An underwater city that had existed in the deep sea for countless years. An underwater city. In the media area of the venue, Auntie Ren was eating the lunchbox provided by the meeting with Li Zi and Old Q while discussing about the prince of the underwater city that would appear in the afternoon. They also had some information about the underwater city in their hand. This information was temporarily distributed by the meeting officials, but there was almost no useful content in it, other than knowing that the existence of the underwater city was older than the earliest known primitive people, and that the structure of the residents in the underwater city was very similar to that of normal humans. There was no more information. If it was the day before yesterday, I should be surprised, right? Auntie Rin supported her chin at this time. But why is there no wave in my heart now? Because now everyone is more concerned about the black card and the black card's owner. Li Zi's appetite was still very good. Her mouth was full of food, but she didn't forget to speak. The black card's owner pressed all the living things in the world to the ground and rubbed them for 10 minutes. At this time, who cares about the underwater city? I don't know if there is any special food in the underwater city that can't be found on the ground. Auntie Rin glanced at Li Zi directly, then frowned. She reached out her hand and wiped off a few grains of rice stuck on the corner of Li Zi's mouth. She shook her head and said, "It's time for you to find a man." Li Zi suddenly said pitifully, "Sister Rin, yesterday you said that you would bring me into the door with a big red sedan chair. Poor me, I resisted the urge to eat supper last night because I was afraid that I couldn't wear the bride dress if I gained weight. How can you now?" Auntie Rin suddenly shuddered. She grabbed a big chicken leg and stuffed it into the foodie's mouth. "I suspect that you guys are having a lesbian relationship?" Old Q said at this time. It was said that Auntie Ren was a widow who was married and had lost her husband. How could she be defeated by Old Q, who only knew how to look at pornographic images? She snorted and said, "If I don't have a lesbian relationship, should I have a relationship with you, a magician who can't change his profession in 27 years? If I really want to have sex with you, can you hold on for a minute?" F***CK. Personal attacks are too much. Auntie Rin suddenly raised her eyebrows. She put her hands on her hips and said sarcastically, "Stop it. If you continue, I will slap your face with a sanitary napkin." Old Q died. He felt that he was still too young. He couldn't become the ultimate magician who was immune to poison, and he didn't have such a strong hobby, so he could only tremble. Ren Xiling rolled her eyes at this time. She immediately stood up and said, "I'm going to touch up my makeup." In the bathroom, Ren Xiling looked at the mirror. After slightly touching up her lip gloss, she dipped her fingers in some water and fixed her hair. She finally arranged the brooch on her chest. Suddenly, "Hey, what a beautiful red agate! Where did you dig it up?" "Thank you," Ren Xiling subconsciously responded, but she instantly felt that something was wrong. Extremely wrong. The reason why it was wrong was because it was obviously a man's voice. Ren Xiling suddenly turned around and saw a young man wearing a black priest's robe but flip-flops. He was leaning against the wall at the entrance. The moment he met Ren Xiling's gaze, the young man wearing the priest's robe even showed a smile. His teeth were as white as the Black Uncle in the Black Uncle toothpaste advertisement, shining. "Hey, I'm here to preach. Are you interested in being locked in a small dark room with me to repent? I'm the kind of person who repents. What kind of person was Auntie Ren? When she was under stress, she would always be the type who reacted more instinctively than rationally. At this time, Auntie Ren directly picked up the bottle of hand soap on the sink and threw it without saying anything. Go to hell, pervert. She immediately recognized who this guy was. This was Father Stella, who spared no effort in insulting everyone on the first day of the meeting. Would she care why he broke into the women's washroom? No. Would she care that he was the leader of the church's transcendent representative? No. What she cared about was that this guy was so shameless that he actually broke into the women's washroom. This temper is really like my mother's when she was about to go through menopause. Father Stella directly raised his hand at this time and easily caught the bottle of hand soap that was flying towards him. He smiled and said, "Fortunately, I was beaten up by my grandma. This is just child's play." "You motherf *cur." Auntie Ren suddenly quivered. Then she looked around, but found that there were no suitable tools on her left and right. She gritted her teeth and prepared to take off her shoes and smash it with her heels. Unexpectedly, before Auntie Ren's shoes were completely taken off, Father Stella was instantly hit on the back of his head with an aluminum alloy baseball bat. "Lord, please move your eyes away from me a little, because at this time, I have already committed an unforgivable sin." Then, Sister Lavinia's voice of repentance was heard as she hit Father Stella with a baseball bat. Father Stella's head was bleeding from being hit by the baseball bat at this time. His head was really bleeding. Blood flowed from the top of his head, then diverted at the bridge of his nose, then slid all the way down to his chin, and finally dripped on the floor. In the end, Father Stella fell directly to the ground as if he was about to stop breathing. He looked like he was foaming at the mouth. You are about to kill him." Auntie Ren couldn't help but remind at this time. The aluminum baseball bat that was held high suddenly paused. Sister Lavinia slowly turned around with a stiff neck, but her eyes were frightening. Auntie Ren, who was used to seeing storms, couldn't help but be shocked by this terrifying gaze at this time. She suddenly stepped back and knocked into the sink. Sister Lavinia seemed to be frightened too. She suddenly screamed, and the baseball bat in her hand fell to the ground at once. Later, Auntie Ren saw Sister Lavinia's face changing speed comparable to a Sichuan opera. Her eyes softened instantly, and she became a holy and devout nun. Sister Lavinia put her hands together and prayed, "Holy Father, Holy Mother, Holy Son, please forgive me. Amen." "I think they can't not forgive you, right?" Auntie Ren muttered at this time. Sister Lavinia took a deep breath at this time and pointed to Father Stella, who was foaming at the mouth on the ground. "Miss, he didn't do anything to you, right? This guy took advantage of the lunch break to run around and sneak into the women's bathroom. This is not the first time. I can let him run away every time. I finally caught him here." Fortunately, Auntie Ren shook her head. "I was just shocked. This guy should have just broken in." "I'm sorry." Sister Lavinia bowed deeply at this time and apologized. "I will definitely reprimand Father Stella. I'm really sorry. You better take care of this priest." Auntie Ren remembered at this time that the priest's identity was the representative of the church, and he was also the leader. She couldn't help but shake her head. Sister Lavinia hurriedly grabbed Father Stella's legs and dragged him away. Father Stella's face was covered in blood, leaving a shocking bloodstain on the floor. "This priest won't die from excessive blood loss, right?" Looking at the motionless Father Stella being dragged away, Auntie Ren couldn't help but sigh. "I don't understand the brain circuits of these extraordinary creatures." "Walk slowly." Auntie Ren subconsciously greeted him. Sister Lavinia couldn't help but be startled. She looked up at Renziling and immediately nodded. "I will. By the way, miss, your ruby brooch is really beautiful." Auntie Ren opened her mouth and was about to say something, but Sister Lavinia had already sped up her movements at this time. She dragged Father Stella out in a few seconds. Renziling didn't intend to catch up. She just treated it as a farce. She subconsciously looked down at the brooch on her chest, and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. "That bitch priest just seems to—" He directly said that it was a ruby. "It's just a blind cat running into a dead mouse." Without thinking too much, Ren Xiling looked at the bloodstains on the ground and was stunned. She immediately ran out sneakily with her head down, as if she was afraid of being recognized. She ran all the way back to the media area. After a while, the summit meeting in the afternoon began again. So, under a lot of focus, the official spokesperson of the conference slowly came to the stage, pointed at the microphone on the table, and said calmly, "Now, let's welcome the Prince of Undersea City, His Royal Highness Riaz, and his fiancée, Miss Lyoga, to come to the stage." A 16 or 17-year-old boy, wearing a black suit and tie at this time, accompanied by a stunning girl, walked slowly to the stage with stiff movements. "Fiancé." Auntie Ren looked at the camera on the stabilizer at this time, then she suddenly raised her head and said with a flash of inspiration, "Yes, fiancé, why didn't I think of this?" "Sister Ren, what are you thinking of?" "I'm thinking, how about—" Auntie Ren turned around at this time, "Let's hold an engagement party for my son and future daughter-in-law?" "Huh?" Auntie Ren nodded and immediately entered work mode in an instant. She concentrated on her work, but at this time, her phone suddenly vibrated. She took it out and found that she actually won the prize. She was selected for the media interview list of the Magician Association. Chapter 1973. Capital City, Kelowna Administration Headquarters. Yen Xiaoxi escorted the acting clan leader of the White Tigers through the heavily guarded passageways. Although the plane used to escort Gong Sun Xiu and Huang Chuan had crashed and their bodies could not be found, the acting clan leader of the White Tigers was still protected. Although Ghost Baby did not follow Gong Sun Xiu and stayed in the Forbidden City because of his death, Yen Xiaoxi's escort mission continued. When he was in the City of Exclusion, there were too many restrictions. For a high-level monster like the White Tiger clan leader, interrogation was an abnormally difficult matter. However, when he was sent back to the headquarters of the agency, the conditions were much more relaxed. The acting clan leader of the White Tigers was finally locked up in an absolutely quiet room. There were shackles all over his body, and there was even a special helmet on his head that completely blocked his vision. However, he could already speak at this moment. "Where is this place?" He seemed to be rather calm. "The deepest part of the Kelowna Administration Headquarters," Yen Xiaoxi replied calmly. "I believe you should be very clear about this place. Next, do you plan to cooperate with us, or do we unilaterally pry open your mouth? Think about it carefully." However, he did not say how long he would think about it. In fact, before the acting clan leader of the White Tigers could respond, Yen Xiaoxi pushed the door open and walked out. This room was specially made, and completely blocked out all sounds. Even the sound of a person's breathing would be exceptionally clear in this place. "Chief, how long do we have to lock him up for?" "Just keep him locked up like this," Yen Xiaoxi said calmly. "He'll ask to see us sooner or later." "I hope so." The subordinate nodded. "Immediately arrange for a flight back to the Forbidden City in the afternoon." Yen Xiaoxi quickly said, "There are a few other consultants guarding the headquarters, and there's also a large formation. Don't worry for the time being." After all, this was the capital of a nation where Hua Nation's destiny was. Apart from the peerless state Night Fire Cloud Evil God, the other consultants of the administration headquarters had always been guarding this place. In the deepest part of the Kelowna administration headquarters, if they could still lose a prisoner, the first thing they would have to do would be a large-scale investigation and purge within the administration headquarters. Bang! At this moment, accompanied by a loud noise, the headquarters of the administration, which was built deep underground in the capital, suddenly shook. "What's going on?" Yen Xiaoxi asked with a frown. The subordinate hesitated and said, "This movement seems to be coming from the laboratory of the Research Institute." "Let's go take a look immediately," Yen Xiaoxi said as she strode out. The Research Institute of the administration was the top priority of the administration in Kelowna. What did humans rely on to catch up with the Taoist masters and the demon masters who had hundreds or even thousands of years of cultivation? It was this kind of technology that was constantly improving. It was the result of researchers constantly fusing Taoist techniques, sorcery, and technology. A peerless warrior like the Fire Cloud Evil God was powerful enough to guard an entire region. However, Kelowna had a population of over 100 million people. There was no second Fire Cloud Evil God. However, with the ever-improving fusion technology, it was possible to see the possibility of catching up to these peerless experts in the future. Yan Xiaoxi was not the only one who had rushed over. The entire administrative bureau had also rushed over because of the commotion caused by the researchers. Yan Xiaoxi even bumped into one of the consultants, Madame Tao, who had super strong healing abilities and was known as the national goddess by the administration. After exchanging some information, they soon arrived at the source of the commotion, which was Dr. Zhao's laboratory. There was a big fire inside and someone was already putting out the fire. Dr. Zhao and Jiang Zhuo were standing in front of the fire. Dr. Zhao even ordered people to put out the fire as if he had gone crazy. Dr. Zhao, what's going on here? Yan Xiaoxi stepped forward and asked in a serious tone. Xiaoxi, you're back. Dr. Zhao turned around and said quickly, don't scold me this time. Listen to me. This is definitely the greatest creation I've made since I joined the Research Institute. I don't know if I can surpass it in the future, but it's already surpassed everything I've done before. I've succeeded. I've succeeded. What is it? Yan Xiaoxi frowned and looked at Madame Tao who was beside her. Cloak. Jiang Zhuo muttered to himself, super weapon, it's implanted into the brain of a living being. The ciliated terminals are directly connected to the brain and cerebellum of the living being, and it uses its will to control the armor. In theory, it can increase the strength of the living being by a few times or even a few hundred times. I didn't expect it to really succeed. Now I really feel lucky that I risked my life to bring it out of the Penglai treasure vault. This substance that can simulate all substances is really amazing. Madame Tao and Yan Xiaoxi looked at the fire in front of them. As the flame gradually extinguished, in a broken culture tank, there was a fist-sized sphere floating quietly. It looked like a cell deconstructed and some kind of fruit. It seems to contain a very strong life force. Madame Tao frowned. Just as the researchers, Dr. Zhao and Jiang Zhuo, were overjoyed by the birth of the sphere, Yan Xiaoxi couldn't help but frown. He thought of many things. Yan Xiaoxi was quite afraid of the myriad element that Dr. Zhao and Jiang Zhuo regarded as a divine object. What kind of technology could create such a special substance that could transform into any substance? Furthermore, for a civilization that could create a substance like myriad element, just how powerful was this civilization? The 10,000 element or mother lode could continuously produce 10,000 element, and 10,000 element could produce all kinds of materials. Such an unknown civilization with 10,000 element, at least in terms of material level, was extremely rich. Such a race, even without production, could enjoy all kinds of conveniences that were unimaginable in this era. Dr. Zhao, does this myriad element or mother really not run out? Yan Xiaoxi suddenly asked. Dr. Zhao thought for a while and said, I don't know for now. At least for now, its activity hasn't weakened at all. It's almost the same as when Jiang Zhuo brought it back. Activity? Yan Xiaoxi frowned. You mean, the myriad element or mother is alive? It's a life form? That's right. Dr. Zhao pushed his glasses and said, at least from all the data we have so far, it's true. And it seems to be growing vaguely. So I made an additional setting. The mother lode of all nature is a kind of creature. The mother lode that Jiang Zhuo brought back may not be fully mature yet. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of changes this mother lode will bring when it fully matures. This doesn't make sense. Yen Xiaoxi couldn't help but shake his head. Since it can continuously produce substances, it won't be consumed and there's no change in entropy. This completely overturns all the theories we know. Dr. Zhao said enthusiastically, so be it. Every revolution is born because of innovation or overturning. We don't know, but it doesn't mean it can't exist. The level of human cognition is still too low. We're like frogs in a well, we don't know how vast the outside world is. Regardless, Yen Xiaoxi didn't intend to discuss such a professional issue with Dr. Zhao at this time. It wasn't his strong suit. One thing he had already realized was that the existence of the myriad element or mother and the security level had to be raised by another level. Everyone, the most important problem now is that although we have synthesized this piece of flesh, everything is still in the theoretical calculation simulation, so, Jiang's was suddenly said, we need someone to be willing to implant it and obtain the experimental data as soon as possible. I hope that Madame Tao can participate in this experiment because Madame Tao's healing ability can ensure the safety of our experimenter. I'm fine with it. Madame Tao nodded and agreed. As for the experimenter, that's a problem. I'll do it. Yen Xiaoxi suddenly said, approve, I'll apply for it later. The experiment will be carried out as soon as possible. Dr. Zhao frowned. Xiaoxi, I'm very happy that you're taking action, but I know that this matter can't be rushed. Even if I can't wait to carry out the physical operation now, it'll be fine. But you. It's settled then. Yen Xiaoxi took a deep breath and said, I'll go and prepare for the implantation in an hour. With that, Yen Xiaoxi strode out of the laboratory. Everyone looked at each other and Dr. Zhao frowned. This guy, is he out of his mind? He's probably anxious. During this period of time, he's been rebuffed repeatedly. Madame Tao shook her head and said coldly, it's not just him, probably all the guys with extraordinary powers in this world. Regardless of whether they admit it or not, they can't avoid something that has already happened. Doubt flashed across Dr. Zhao's eyes. On the other hand, Jiang's was seemed to have thought of something and blurted out, you mean, the black 10 minutes? Madame Tao said slowly, for us, regardless of whether we were born with it or obtained it through long and arduous training, to us, strength is the foundation of our footing. An ant wouldn't wish to lose its strength, a tiger wouldn't wish to have its claws flattened. But in the face of that terrifying prohibition, we would even start to doubt ourselves. That kind of power is really too terrifying. It's like we've been abandoned in a doomsday environment. There are terrifying enemies everywhere, and we, who are unarmed and defenseless, yearn for a weapon. Even if it's just a nail, it will do. Indeed. Jiang Zhou laughed bitterly and nodded in agreement. Although he was a programmer, at the same time, he was also a Taoist who had been caught to cultivate immortality when he was young because of his aptitude. He had also experienced that terrifying feeling of powerlessness. Go and prepare. Dr. Zhao suddenly said expressionlessly, the surgery. It was the sound of knocking. It was actually the half-rolled-up iron gate of the second-hand electrical appliance shop. Bei Bei furrowed his brows as he saw Nan Xiaonan, who had bent over and poked her head in through the half-opened iron gate. Bei Bei was slightly surprised. She felt that during this period of time in her life, she seemed to have interacted more with this ordinary woman. This didn't seem to be the case. She didn't know why. Perhaps it was because of an unscientific sixth sense unique to women. However, after a few interactions, especially after eating a happy, hot pot dinner together, as a friend, what she should be showing right now was a hint of surprise and surprise. Sister Xiaonan, why are you here? Bei Bei hurriedly walked out. I drank too much last night. I just woke up and came downstairs to find something to eat. I just bought some food and happened to pass by here. When I saw that the door was open, I came to take a look. Bei, are you the only one looking after the shop? Nan Xiaonan had already crossed the half-opened iron gate and walked into the second-hand electrical appliance shop. Yes, I'm the only one here. The boss went out to collect the goods. Bei casually replied. Have you eaten lunch? Nan Xiaonan waved the food in her hand. I seem to have bought a little too much. Let's eat together. No need. I've been on a diet recently. I'll be fine after eating some fruit for lunch. Bei smiled. Nan Xiaonan shrugged. After looking around, she curiously said, Your shop is quite strange. You say that you're open for business, but you're only half open and not accepting customers. You say that you're not doing business, but the door is half open. Bei, is your business good? It's barely keeping up. We're all doing business with our neighbors. It's not good, but it's not bad either. It's just a little tiring. How can work not be tiring? Nan Xiaonan shook her head and sat down as if she was familiar with this place. She opened the bag of food and said with an embarrassed smile, I'm a little tired from walking here. Do you mind if I finish eating here before leaving? The air conditioner in the rental house isn't cold today. Maybe it was turned on for too long last night or something. So you came here to freeload off the air conditioner? Bei probed. There's also Wi-Fi. Nan Xiaonan took out her phone and said, Bei, what's your password? I want to watch the live broadcast. Watch the TV. Bei shook his head and turned on an old TV. There's only one internet cable in the shop. Stingy. Your boss Jean is so stingy. Nan Xiaonan said disdainfully. Bei didn't say anything. He just smiled casually and said, You watch. I still have some things to do. After saying that, Bei went back to the counter. When he sat down, he quietly pressed a button under the table. After that, Bei picked up a book and started reading. At this moment, the TV was showing the beginning of the afternoon rush hour. They were talking about the Prince of the Underwater City. Bei looked up at Nan Xiaonan. She was eating with the live broadcast. She didn't do anything, but the smell of the food was a little strong. The whole house was filled with the smell of snail powder. By the way, Bei, do you still hire people here? Nan Xiaonan suddenly asked. Part-time jobs are also available. Do you work by the hour? We don't need it for the time being. Bei smiled and said, Why, Sister Xiaonan, do you have a friend looking for a job? Yes, I'm asking for a friend. Nan Xiaonan could only smile embarrassedly. This little girl is unexpectedly difficult to deal with? Chapter 1974. In the underground studio of the second-hand electrical appliance store. Several people were currently gathered in front of the screen, where they could see everything that was happening in the electrical appliance store's lobby. After Bibi pressed the switch under the table. Boss Jean, this is the worker girl that Bibi mentioned before, who lives in the nearby village in the city. She seems quite enthusiastic, huh? Hearing this, Mr. Jean only frowned, but didn't say anything. This team had an agreement that they wouldn't hide anything from each other. They knew about the worker girl Nan Xiaonan. Later, when Boss Jean took away the listening device hidden in the second-hand washing machine, they were also the first to know. But, although this woman looks a bit unscrupulous, she seems to be living a good life, right? Chengua said with a smile, and even used her elbow to lightly nudge Mr. Jean. Do you want to consider it? Mr. Jean said indifferently, Don't worry about this woman. Bernard, switch the screen back, the meeting is about to start. Got it. Bernard responded lazily. Everyone didn't care. Chengua's words were just a joke. From the day they joined this team, they actually didn't think that they could live a stable life. The stable life that once belonged to them had long been taken away. Under everyone's gaze, Riaz walked up to the stage with slight uneasiness. Right now, he was holding Lyoga, but it was more Lyoga who was supporting him. Riaz found that he really wasn't suitable to deal with this kind of public situation with so many people. If it wasn't for the fact that he could communicate with Lyoga mentally through the collar's function, he wouldn't have. If you really can't do it later, I'll say a few words and you'll say a few words. But don't always rely on me. As a man, you have to learn to face these things by yourself. I'll try my best. But there's one thing. What? If I really need your help, can you not make me make expressions like an evil smile, a deep gaze, an evil charm, and so on? Watch the road, idiot. Lyoga's thunderous voice rang out in Riaz's mind, causing him to feel dizzy. But in the end, they still managed to make it to the podium. Riaz took a deep breath and said steadily, "Hello, everyone. My name is Riaz, and I am currently the first prince of Underwater City. The one beside me is my fiancé. Next, I will briefly introduce the history of our underwater city. In addition, I have also prepared some information about the underwater city. They came out from the bottom of the sea so quickly." In the house, Boss Luo was talking to the maid. Actually, it hasn't been that long. In fact, not much time had passed. In the timeline of world number 003, it had only been about 10 days since Boss Luo left the underwater city. The undersea city was still being rebuilt, and it looked like there were many things waiting to be done. At this time, the undersea city had chosen to land on the surface, and contact with the human world seemed to be a rather urgent matter. After all, once the Transcendent Summit is over, it means that human society will truly step into the Transcendent Society, right? Miss Maid said casually. Instead of being discovered in the future, and being an unknown civilization that is difficult to judge between us and the enemy, it is better to take the initiative. At least, we can more or less take the initiative. The magic energy civilization mastered by the underwater city was quite advanced, but for countless years, the underwater city had never been able to develop much. The biggest reason was because of the existence of the Siren tribe and Sin. The Siren tribe had now been exterminated by Louis XXXIX. As for Sin, it was no longer able to keep the undersea city in captivity. For the undersea city that had already obtained freedom, it would usher in a positive stage of development. In Miss Maid's opinion, the conditions of the underwater city were quite good. If they moved toward the humans on the surface, they might be able to get more development resources. Taking a step back, even if they suffered setbacks in the surface world, it would not have much impact on the underwater city. For countless years, the people of the underwater city were more adapted to the underwater environment. The living space under the sea was much larger than on the land. Moreover, the underwater city had a last resort, Cicero's experimental site. Therefore, the underwater city seemed to have chosen a sensitive time to appear in the sight of the humans on the surface, but in fact, the underwater city already had a good hand. Now, they just had to see how Riaz and Lyoga, who had this good hand, planned to play. According to the current knowledge of the humans on the surface, the application of magic energy is like the instinctive genes of the people of the underwater city after a long period of evolution. In the underwater city, any newborn baby can naturally sense the existence of magic energy. On the screen, the prince of the underwater city was introducing the magic energy civilization to the world in a well-behaved manner. The audience in front of the screen was also secretly pondering, especially behind the transcendence of various countries. It was easy for them to get the most important information from the appearance of the underwater city this time, to establish diplomatic relations. There was no doubt that the underwater city chose to appear at this time to deal with the upcoming impact of the Transcendence Society. The underwater city has a population of 9 million. I just don't know which forces it intends to contact. The discussion gradually increased. Whether it was the politicians of various countries, behind the scenes of the major forces, or ordinary people. Of course, the aspects that they paid attention to were not the same. Kelowna. They have chosen Kelowna as their first stop. Perhaps there are more secret agreements. Establishing diplomatic relations is completely possible, but it must achieve mutual technology sharing. The energy of the magic energy civilization is actually clean energy. The emergence of a new energy may mean as much to humans as transcendence. We humans may be able to usher in a new industrial revolution. Once the underwater city reaches adulthood, it can be matched from work to spouse? Damn it. This is clearly a utopia. Can't they open up their nationality? The discussion of the black card gradually changed because of the description of the underwater city by the first prince of the underwater city. They were gradually attracted by the ideal social life model of the underwater city. Because of the existence of magic energy, materials were extremely abundant. Everyone could distribute according to their needs, and the elimination of the poor class was completely realized. The medical system was extremely developed, and any disease could be treated for free. However, there were also those who were skeptical about this. In human cognition, since such a utopian society existed, it must be because the entire society had castrated something. People who liked to doubt always liked to doubt everything. However, in the summit meeting venue, Riaz's speech did not stop. The underwater city hopes to coexist peacefully with the human society on the land. We are happy to share the life and environment of the deep sea with the humans on the land. Riaz looked around at this time. Therefore, we will create a list and invite some countries and groups who are willing to establish diplomatic relations with the underwater city to send people to visit our underwater city. The venue was quiet, and only the flashing lights kept converging on Riaz and Lyoga. At this moment, in the media area, a middle-aged man with a calm face suddenly raised his hand. As the organizer of the summit, the spokesperson of the Kelowna Authority allowed the middle-aged man to ask questions. The report of the transcendent representative of the humans on the land had ended. The appearance of the underwater city was the second stage of this summit meeting. From this stage onwards, the media could freely ask questions. May I ask, Prince Riaz, since the underwater city has existed for more than tens of thousands of years, then, in this long history, has the underwater city never come into contact with the world on the land even once? Or is it that at a time and place unknown to us, the underwater city has actually done a lot of research on humans? This time, is it really the first time the underwater city has stepped onto the land? Faced with this question, Riaz frowned subconsciously, but his brows soon relaxed. Probably because he received a hint from Lyoga, Prince Riaz slowly said, "This is indeed the first time the underwater city has officially stepped onto the land. As for whether there has ever been an investigation on the land, I can only say that the humans on the land have never stopped exploring and researching the sea or even developing it." The middle-aged man quickly noted it down and immediately planned to ask another question. "According to what you said, you used to live on the land." But the middle-aged man's question was instantly interrupted by the spokesperson of the Kelowna Authority. "I'm sorry, because of time constraints, each person can only ask once. Next." The middle-aged media man didn't care and quickly finished his question. "You used to be the masters of the land. This time, is your appearance also with the purpose of making a comeback? Please answer my question, Prince Riaz. What are you doing? The public should have the right to know. The whole world is watching here. This is the truth that everyone wants to know. Let me go." The official spokesperson frowned at this time. The agent in charge of the scene was already on the move. First, he cut off the middle-aged media man's microphone, and then comforted him. "The sea is a world that is far vaster than the land." At this moment, Riaz's voice suddenly sounded. "Even after countless years of exploration, the underwater city still hasn't explored every corner of the deep sea. Our population is not large, and even because of the long biological evolution, it is difficult for us to adapt to the sunlight on the land. For our children, the land is just an unreachable dream in a museum. We do want to bathe in the sun again, but not in a barbaric way." When Riaz spoke, Lapis Song frowned slightly. These words obviously didn't come from her, but from Riaz himself. Looking at the crowd in the venue, and finally looking at the slightly agitated middle-aged media man, Riaz slowly said, "If possible, I hope you can walk to the beach. Maybe you have been there before. Do you still remember how you felt when you saw the endless sea for the first time? Did the sea bring you a kind of tranquility?" The middle-aged media man was stunned. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. Riaz said, "I like it. I like to walk out of the barrier of our underwater city and let myself be in the sea. I look up at the trace of sunlight that can sprinkle to the bottom of the sea. I can't feel the warmth of this trace of sunlight through my hands, but when it is projected on my body, my heart will feel warm." He faced the gazes of the crowd again and said sincerely, "I hope that you can give us this trace of warmth. At the same time, if you don't mind, please allow me to give you this trace of tranquility of the sea. Thank you." In front of the crowd, the prince of the underwater city deeply bowed. "What the f***ck? This prince is quite something. I love him." A political speech. Who knows how many think tanks are helping to write these lines. His words are so nice. Too bad he already has a fiancée. But such a young prince, if we calculate his age, who is the strongest queen of balls? Passers-by have become fans. Regardless of the current public opinion, the first media man who rushed to ask a question had already sat back down expressionlessly. As for what he was thinking, no one paid too much attention to it. Because soon someone asked again. Because there was only one chance, the questions were naturally much sharper. However, it seemed that, under the sincere speech of the first prince of the undersea city, the sharp claws hidden in the sharp questions had been stripped from the very beginning. Because Riaz had already emphasized from the beginning that what he needed was peaceful coexistence. "Hey boss, why don't you raise your hand to speak?" In the lively media area, looking at Renziling, who was only taking notes and taking photos, old Q couldn't help but ask in surprise, "I thought you would at least step on the stool and raise your hand." Auntie Ren glanced at old Q angrily at this time. "Don't you know what kind of media you are? Which one of these who can ask questions is not supported by a big country? Do you think this kind of interview is really fair? Whoever can ask questions and who is not qualified, the conference has already arranged for you properly. Don't believe me? If you don't believe me, you can raise your sign and see if anyone cares about you." "That's true." Old Q smiled embarrassedly, then he immediately muttered, "But since I'm here, I can go back and brag about it. What if I hit the jackpot?" Auntie Ren suddenly rolled her eyes. Old Q shrugged his shoulders. He wanted to act cool, so he raised his signboard and put on a show. "Reporter in position A013, you can ask a question." At this moment, the spokesperson of the Kelowna Authority suddenly said. Old Q looked up at his sign stupidly, then he looked at his boss with a stiff neck and swallowed his saliva. "Boss, what did you just say?" F***ck. Auntie Ren couldn't help but open her mouth wide at this time. The ballpoint pen in her hand fell to the ground at once. "Is your mouth blessed?" "Reporter in position A013, you can ask a question." The official spokesperson frowned and urged at this time. This was not his idea. This was the idea of His Royal Highness of the Underwater City. "Why did you choose this one?" Leoga asked puzzledly at this time. She was not angry because Riaz didn't speak according to her intention, but her tone was much gentler for the first time. "Ah, I just randomly chose it?" Riaz said casually at this time. "Didn't you say that these media may have been arranged and let me randomly pick one to disrupt their rhythm? I just randomly picked one. Is there a problem?" "No." The female demon of the underwater city shrugged and whispered, "As long as you like it." When did this female demon become so easy to talk to? In a luxurious room, Song Ying, who was drinking coffee, suddenly spat out a mouthful of coffee, looking at the woman who slowly stood up on the screen. Miss Sun of the Song family couldn't help but rub her eyebrows and muttered, Song Howren, this guy, when did he have so much power? But it wasn't me. At the conference, facing the questioning gaze of the 100 Tribulations Taoist, Song Howren said with a bitter smile, "This media is indeed under my niece's company, but I only intend to let this media show its face. In the future, I do intend to support it to become the official media of the Tao Sect Association. But obviously, at present, the administration will not allow me to do so. This may be luck." The 100 Tribulations Taoist nodded and immediately said, "I look at this woman's face, she is really blessed. Her spiritual aura is overwhelming." Finally, under countless cameras, Auntie Ren stood up with the help of Lizzie. Auntie Ren's mind was in a mess at this time. She never thought that she could ask questions, so naturally, she didn't think about what to ask. But at this time, facing the realization of everyone, she had to bite the bullet and ask, "Prince Riaz, will the underwater city also participate in the fight for the black card?" God knows what she was thinking at that time. How could she ask such a sensitive question? But at this time, the whole world suddenly quieted down. Its power was even comparable to Boss Luo's 10 minutes of darkness, F***ck. This lady? In an RV that was disguised as an interview vehicle on the street, Officer Ma suddenly blacked out and almost couldn't stand steadily. Finally, his legs went soft and he directly sat down. On the other hand, Yi Yen was gently pounding his forehead with a bitter smile on his face. Chapter 1975. Although she looked confused when she stood up to ask the question, the moment she picked up the microphone, she was no longer confused. Instead, her eyes were full of vigor. This was probably the so-called professional instinct. She's just talking nonsense. She always wants to make big news. This time, it's really big news. In the modified limousine, the scene on the screen was so beautiful that Officer Ma didn't dare to look at it, but he still stared at Ren Xiling on the screen through his fingers. Unexpectedly, Yi Yen suddenly turned off the screen at this time. He took a deep breath and said, "Don't look at it. Even if there's something, we can't stop it. She's just doing an interview. There are so many eyes all over the world watching. What can happen? Let's watch the replay later. Now it's time for us to work." Ma Hao had to nod, and immediately looked at the things that Yi Yen put out at this time. Old Ma lifted a green wig with a slightly strange expression and said with a wry smile, "I didn't expect that after living for so many years, I only became a spirited young man now." In addition to the wig and clothes, there were also tattoos. The kind with watermark stickers. Yi Yen smiled, taking the green wig and then putting it on his head. Sir Ma was now watching. Unexpectedly, Yi Yen suddenly put the wig on Sir Ma's head. "Well, you're more suitable. F***ck. This was probably the friendship between old men. Yelgo shook his head, and then carefully put on golden contact lenses for himself. What Yi Yen wanted to do was very simple, to fish for law enforcement. As for whether it would be successful, it could only be left to fate. Damn, how dare this woman ask such a question? Everyone knows that no matter what kind of secret actions they take to search for the black card, it won't be mentioned in public. Is this deliberately arranged by the Kelowna administration? But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems that the Kelowna Authority was the first to come into contact with Seabed City. They should have reached some consensus. The speech just now was indeed very interesting and very moving. However, if this problem is not handled properly, the good impression that has been built up before will be almost completely destroyed. This female reporter is quite something. She's a talent. There were whispers in the venue, and the internet was in an uproar. The screen was full of less than 66,666 S floating across. Now, the whole world was waiting to see how the Prince of Undersea City would answer this sensitive topic. Everyone knew what the black card meant. It meant that one could obtain a relationship that could grant wishes from Qin Yi. No one doubted his ability. The only thing to consider was who would get the black card in the end, and what kind of wish would the person who got the black card make, and whether the wish would put the human world in danger. After all, Heidi City was another civilization hidden in the depths of the sea. Even if the Prince of Heidi City claimed that he only hoped for peace and coexistence, once he wanted to get his hands on the black card, don't you just want to go to the land? Such a request was not too much. The population of 9 million in Heidi City would not make the world more crowded in a world with billions of people. It was completely manageable. Since Heidi City had become a communist state, and the Heidi City Kingdom government was responsible for life and death, there was no hunger nor poverty, and even epic tier monsters like single dogs could be exterminated. In such a perfect society, what do you want the black card for? Most of the time, one's eyes could show enough information, and at this time, in the venue, everyone looked at Prince Riaz with the same speechless question. Look at what you've done. In Riaz's mind, Lyoga's voice suddenly exploded. He could not help but smile bitterly and said, "How would I know? Lyoga, how should I answer this question? Should we look for the black card or not? The whole world is looking for it. Every human on the surface wants to look for it. Why can't we look for it?" Lyoga's angry voice sounded. "These people on the surface definitely don't want us to look for it. This is equal to dividing their chances. But at this time, if you say that you don't want to look for it, these people might force us to make a corresponding promise. But once we confirm the answer, the political image that we created before will. Damn it, why did this female reporter ask such a vicious question? Lyoga, how should I answer? They are all looking at me. If I keep silent, I can't take it anymore. Don't disturb me. I'm thinking. Damn it, so annoying, so annoying. Don't be agitated. I heard that agitation will affect the fetus. Go to hell, Riaz. This is a mess that you created yourself. I don't care. You can answer however you like. At most, we will go back to Heidi City and hide. I want to see how many people dare to invade. At most, we will fight." Riaz smiled bitterly in his heart. Although Lyoga used to be irritable, she was not to this extent. This was probably what the people on the surface called pregnancy dumb for 3 years? At this moment, the spokesperson of the conference saw that the Prince of Undersea City had been silent, so he had to quietly remind him, "Prince, for unreasonable questions, you can also remain silent and keep the answer. Although there will be some impact, it's better than answering both sides." "I want to try," Riaz suddenly said after pondering for a moment at this time. The spokesperson of the conference couldn't help but be startled at this time, but Prince Riaz had already pointed at the microphone in front of him and said softly, "This may be fake news. This may be fake news." Prince Riaz's voice was very soft, but under the support of the loudspeaker system, it was unusually clear in the venue. They looked at the Prince of Heidi City in surprise, including the initiator of the question. After asking this question, Auntie Ren's scalp was already numb, and her legs almost went soft. She was annoyed with herself. Why did she become so mean when she thought about it? But at this time, facing Prince Riaz's response, Auntie Ren, who was still holding the microphone, couldn't help but instinctively ask, Fake what?" "I said, this may be fake news," Prince Riaz said slowly at this time. "First of all, we are not sure if any wish can be granted after obtaining the black card. I remember that when he distributed these black cards, he also said that he would grant the wishes of the holder of the black card and the person who can make the corresponding payment. But we still don't know what kind of payment is in line with the price of getting the wish granted. Therefore, it is also possible that it will not be granted. In other words, before the function of the black card is confirmed, Heidi City will not take too much practical action on the black card. At the same time, I also hope that the people on the surface can look at this matter more rationally. Is the black card worth us fighting for at all costs, and is what we need to ask for really that much? Thank you for your question, miss. Ah, you're welcome. Auntie Ren was startled, then she shivered. She suddenly made a move. She clamped the microphone under her armpit, then clapped vigorously. At the same time, she couldn't help but feel slightly relieved. In the venue, Renzeiling's clapping filled with the desire to survive sounded alone. However, in this huge venue, it seemed very weak and small. Seeing this, Lizzie also suddenly stood up and clapped, and she pulled old Q along. The three people's clapping still seemed abnormally weak in this huge venue. At this moment, Fire Cloud Evil God took the lead and continued to clap. The speaker of the conference suddenly had a thought, and he quickly picked up the microphone and said loudly, "I'm very happy that Prince Riaz of Heidi City brought us a wonderful speech. Prince Riaz's words about the black card are very incisive. Maybe we really need to think about this matter again and again. Through continuous reflection, we can learn from experience and move forward. At the same time, I also look forward to hearing more about Heidi City in the future." At the Taoist Association's side, Song Hauran was the first to stand up and applaud. Although it was a bit inappropriate, Taoist Master 100 Calamity didn't say anything and just smiled slightly. Close to the church's side, Sister Lavinia also applauded generously. Probably because of the previous encounter in the washroom? This might be a kind of etiquette or tacit understanding in a large-scale meeting. Suddenly, thunderous applause echoed. Under such applause, someone quickly went on stage and led the way for the Prince of Heidi City. "Lyoga, can you help me? My legs are weak." "You?" Li. "Help me, my legs are weak." Oh. Auntie Rin sat down weakly and looked at the venue that gradually calmed down. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. "Mediating is our traditional skill. Fortunately, this speaker can hold on, and it's a close call." "Then why did you ask such a stupid question?" Old Q wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "Damn. Who told you to raise the sign? You're dead." Auntie Rin suddenly recovered a trace of anger. "I'm going to post all the pornographic pictures in your computer on the monthly performance bulletin board. Public execution. F***CK. You trashy mother of my son. I've tolerated you for a long time. If you dare to post me on the bulletin board." Old Q stood up fiercely at this time and said angrily, "At least type something," using the most ruthless tone to say the most cowardly words. In any case, today's summit meeting slowly came to an end with this round of warm applause. As for tomorrow's summit meeting, it would be the most important part of this World Extraordinary Summit. Because next, it would discuss the division of extraordinary forces, the definition of extraordinary creatures, the census, how extraordinary creatures would integrate into human society, and the bill on extraordinary safety, especially this safety bill. An unrestricted supernatural power would be an unimaginable disaster for human society. Even so, for extraordinary beings who possessed supernatural powers and pursued individual freedom, restrictions were unacceptable in the first place. It would be an extraordinarily difficult discussion. "It's a close call, but not dangerous." The evil god of Fire Cloud slowly exhaled. This job was really not for humans. He would rather have the agency select thousands of young elites for him to train than sit here. "The real meeting starts tomorrow. Consultant, you should rest well tonight," his subordinates said considerately from the side. Fire Cloud Evil God shook his head, then suddenly remembered something and said, "The female reporter who asked the question, don't let her come tomorrow. Otherwise, she'll cause trouble. I'll go back and immediately arrange to cancel the access of this reporter." The subordinate nodded. "She actually asked such a question, she wouldn't even know if she died. I think it's you who died without knowing what happened." At this moment, a voice that made the agency agent tremble suddenly sounded behind him. This was probably the common reaction of most senior agents to this voice. Kelowna Shinryu's voice. "Consultant. Consultant Long. How did you?" Kelowna Shinryu put one hand on her waist and said impatiently, "I've already told you, you can do whatever you want from now on. The agents were still confused, but Fire Cloud Evil God seemed to have thought of something and looked at Long Shirao with a frown. Lord Long, is there something special about this female reporter? Special? How is it not special? For this woman, that damn profiteer slapped me. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. Why don't you try messing with this female reporter? I guarantee you won't be greeted with 10 minutes of darkness, but 10 days of darkness, 10 years of darkness. But Kelowna Shinryu couldn't say that out loud. She couldn't say out loud, "Yes, I was slapped by a scumbag, are you happy?" If that was the case, he might as well take her life. Asking too much won't do you any good. Kelowna Shinryu pretended to be profound and said. Fire Cloud Evil God's frown deepened. He tried to reason with Long Siju and said sincerely, Lord Long Siju, at this sensitive time, I hope that there won't be any unpleasantness between us, and we won't hide anything. Right now, the great powers are eyeing us covetously. Internally, there is Gong Sun Xiu and the unknown force behind him causing chaos. At this time we should. Fine. Probably annoyed, the true dragon of godly land said impatiently, This woman is under my protection, okay? She's my relative, if you dare to touch her, you're not giving me face. What? Fire Cloud Evil God was shocked. Is this woman also from the Xianyuan Palace? Not the Xianyuan Palace. Long Shirao rolled her eyes and said, What? Can't I have any other relatives besides the Xianyuan Palace? She's my godmother, okay? Godmother? This time, Fire Cloud Evil God wasn't shocked, but shocked. Yes, godmother. What's the problem? Long Shirao swallowed her saliva quietly and said, If you dare to touch my godmother, I'll kill your whole family. Kelowna Shinryu was very happy at this time. But she didn't know that this sentence was spreading to the whole Kelowna administration at an unimaginable speed. What? Godmother? The 100 Tribulations Taoist master, who was drinking tea, suddenly spat out a mouthful and murmured to himself, I was wondering if I should ask the immortal to show me the way and recruit such a good seedling with such a strong spiritual chi. Shinryu's godmother. I'm afraid I can only bow when I see her. Why is it like this? Little song, this year is very magical, isn't it? I'm also confused now, President. Song Howren smiled bitterly. Kelowna Shinryu's godmother. This time, he really didn't know who was climbing who. Chapter 1976. In the evening, the sun was setting. The young man with glasses, who would become a senior in high school after this summer, was about to go home with a stack of study materials. On the way home, he passed by a game store. He couldn't resist the publicity of several newly released games, so he had to take a shortcut to get home before the curfew. But the alleys in the city were not safe recently. It was rumored that there had been a lot of robberies in the city recently in the name of monsters or superpowered people who were collecting protection fees. It should be fine, the young man with glasses comforted himself in his heart, while holding the study materials in his arms and gradually quickening his pace. Boy! Stop! A voice suddenly sounded. The bespectacled young man was shocked. He immediately lowered his head and started running. Unexpectedly, the bespectacled young man didn't run far before he was directly blocked by a figure. The evening was fading. In the dark alley, the young man with glasses saw a huge figure hiding in the shadows, and it had horns. On the top of the head, there were 2 horns like a bull's, which were slowly approaching him. The young man with glasses was almost scared, and suddenly fell to the ground. He curled up, holding his head. Don't hit me. I have no money. I just bought the game. Study materials with my money. Don't hit me. The huge figure had appeared in front of the young man with glasses, completely blocking his sight. In the darkness, the pair of sharp horns were exceptionally frightening. At this moment, a green light suddenly appeared and illuminated the face of this guy with 2 horns on his head, the monster's face. Instantly, the young man with glasses saw the face of a dead man with a beard and a strange mark on his face. Ah! After a scream, the young man with glasses fainted on the ground. He fainted just like that? What should I do? The guy with a pair of big horns. Officer Ma scratched his head, putting down the flashlight in his hand, and then squatting down, pushing the young man with glasses, frowning. Am I so scary? Sir Ma turned back. Yi Yen and Yi Ergo behind him shrugged at this time. In the end, Yi Yen was loyal enough to say directly, Don't you know? F***ck. Sir Ma stood up angrily, but at this time, the long horn stuck on his head was suddenly unstable, and was about to fall, so he quickly reached out to hold it. Sir Ma was dissatisfied and angry at this time. Who forced me to pretend to be a bull monster? I am a righteous person. Okay. Yi Yen waved his hand at this time. Send the kid away first. According to the previous intelligence, Mr. Jean should be in this area. Maybe we can meet before the curfew. What if we can't? Ma Howd was still holding his long horn, which was about to fall down. Then let's continue tomorrow. Yi Yen shrugged and said, When did you become so impatient when handling cases? F***ck. Old Ma angrily reached out to hold the other long horn that was about to fall down. I just don't understand. What kind of disguise is this? I have never heard that the Bull Demon King has green hair. This is the Bull Demon King from the Journey to the West. I won't do it. Sir Ma was finally willing to tear off the horns on his head, and threw the wig on the ground, stepping on it, and said with his eyes wide open, Didn't I tell you that I have been saving it for several years? Don't be like this, old Ma. Yi Yen at this time put his hand on Sir Ma's shoulder with a smile. I tell you, I think that among the three of us, only you are really not qualified for this task. You see, you scared the kid when you came out. No one is more like a monster than you. Believe me, you are the most outstanding monster in this city. Mr. Jean, a guy who hates non-human creatures, will definitely not be able to resist taking action against you. At that time, you will be the hero who cracked the international criminal group. Come on, old Ma. Don't you want to sit in Director Lu's office and play Minesweeper comfortably? Yi Yen said patiently. Think about it, when you are at the last few steps of Minesweeper, you are suddenly interrupted and click on the wrong button. How tiring will that be? I will have a mental breakdown on the spot. So, think about it. Once you get promoted and sit on the top, who would dare to not knock on your door and kick you in? Yi Yen said again, You see, even if she is our sister-in-law, she will have to respect you, right? Old Ma. If this case is done well, you will be the master. Xiling, this crazy girl, can only serve you tea. What the F***ck? Why do I suddenly feel excited after hearing your words? Right. Yi Yen patted old Ma's chest encouragingly at this time, and then turned back to look at Yelgo. Come on. Touch up the makeup of our police officer Ma. Do it well, don't let the horns fall off. Oh, let's send the kid away first. Okay. Yelgo nodded and immediately bent over to help the frightened young man with glasses up. At this time, something slipped out of the boy's study materials and fell to the ground. It seemed to be some game CDs. What's this? Evil. Depraved. Demon sealing record? He picked up the CD and looked at it. What's wrong? Yi Yen suddenly asked behind him. Nothing. Yelgo shook his head and stuffed the CD into his pocket. Then he helped the young man with glasses to leave. It's not a serious game. Why are you playing this game instead of studying? Confiscated. But until the curfew began, Officer Ma, as a spiritual partner, still had no results. I think this expression of mine can be better. It has to highlight a bit of cynicism within the viciousness and a bit of desire for hope in a society filled with hatred. If I can show that kind of inner struggle and pain, wouldn't the effect be better? Old Yi, say something. Old Yi? Is it true or not? Well, yes, Li Zi and I are now in the hotel where the Magician Association is staying. It's okay, don't worry about us. What, don't worry at all? Is there anyone who smashes things like you? I suffered so much in vain, just hang up on me. That night, Lizzie was very hungry. Because after the summit meeting on the third day, Madame Wren's team didn't disperse, but went to the hotel where the Magician Association was staying. Because the Magician Association wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to promote Elizabeth's image, the interview was scheduled for tonight. Tomorrow was the most important part of the summit meeting. Perhaps the Magician Association wanted to reveal some information to the public in advance through this interview to test the public's reaction, so as to better adjust the response plan of the next meeting, and so on. At this time, Madame Wren didn't take away the phone that had been disconnected, but continued to stick it on her face. She saw Lizzie and old Q walking over slowly with dinner. No need to give me supper. If you are tired, go to bed early. Her voice became louder. I know you are a good girl. I'm fine, I'm an adult. You are the adults. There's no one at home at night. Remember to restrain yourself. Ah, why don't you talk? You are shy. Oh no, Lizzie and the others are back. That's it. Don't worry about me. Boss, are you chatting with your baby son again? Old Q said casually. Madame Wren laughed and said, Yes. This kid is worried about us and has called several times, but I didn't see him. Look at how anxious he is. Lizzie blinked and was full of suspicion, according to her understanding of Luaccio in the next room. You guys have a pretty good relationship. Old Q was stunned when he heard that. Madame Wren said with a nose that was about to reach the sky, It's just SOSO. This kid is introverted and shy. I just said a few words and she blushed. Really, what haven't I seen before? She is an adult and still shy. You sound like you've really seen everything? Lizzie asked curiously. TSK, this Lizzie, when she is hungry, she speaks nonsense. At this time, Auntie Wren kindly grabbed a handful of white rice and stuffed it into Pear's mouth. Then, she stuffed another handful into Pear's mouth, rubbing and rubbing. Eat more, Pear. We will be busy for a long time tonight. Eat more, eat more. Lizzie was stunned. She was kidding. The hotel where the Magician Association stayed was strictly guarded and inspected, but it was not as harsh as the entrance of the summit meeting. Of course, the people who were responsible for checking the interview with the Magician Association at night were still from the Kelowna administration, but there were also the remaining members of the Magician Association. I feel that the inspection here is a bit casual. Madame Wren and the others were sitting in a separate reception room. She looked around, and they are very polite, unlike those guys in the conference hall during the day. They were all shy. They were politely invited in by the two agents from the agency. Before they left, the two agents even warmly expressed that if there was anything they needed, they could just ask, and they would definitely do their best to satisfy them, and so on. Boss, don't you feel that the way the two agents looked at us was a bit strange? Old Q suddenly asked curiously. That look, it was like little Zhang's look when he saw Sugar Daddy. It was so fake. Really? Ren Xiling paused for a moment and shook her head. If they were polite, you would say they were fake. If they pulled you in fiercely, you would say they were arrogant. Old Q, you can't have double standards. I'm double. Old Q pointed at himself and then deflated. Okay, I'm double standard. I'm a dog with double standards. Shu, come in, sit down. Madame Wren changed her expression and sat up straight. The door to the reception room slowly opened, and the first person to enter was the little vampire girl that the Magician Association announced to the world this time, why Elizabeth. Following that was a woman with a silver eye mask that covered half of her face. She wore a black business suit and gave off a capable and experienced vibe. The woman with the coiled hair first greeted, Hello, Ms. Wren, I'm you, currently Elizabeth's secretary. This interview will be accompanied by me. Hello, I'm Ren Xiling, these two are, I know them. Miss Yu smiled slightly at this time. I have seen the personal information you submitted. Then, let's start. After all, we don't have much time. Renziling felt like she was being dominated by someone. She didn't like this kind of feeling. She was always the one on top in the past. However, facing a giant like the Magician Association, it wasn't up to a small figure like her to resist, so she could only nod. By the way, what about the other media? But Madame Rin still couldn't help but say, I remember the list of selected media, there should be 6 more. We made a last-minute adjustment. Miss Yu smiled at this time. We thought it would be better to interview alone, so we separated them. The other media were arranged in order. The vampire girl subconsciously looked at you beside her at this time. Weren't the other media outlets thrown aside and arranged for a subordinate to deal with them? Why did they arrange for them to be at the back? But Elizabeth was very well behaved and didn't expose Miss Yu's words. She just kept silent. Is that so? Renziling nodded subconsciously. It seems that we are quite lucky today. Miss Yu said, Miss Ren, do you really think you are lucky? Have you ever thought that such an arrangement is actually intentional? Why? Renziling asked curiously. Miss Yu took out a document at this time and looked at it while saying calmly, according to the information, the company Miss Ren works for belongs to a group called Song Dynasty. Although the Song Dynasty group is very strong, it is still a little far from the world of transcendence. So I'm more curious about how such a small media company can get into the main venue of the summit meeting. Madame Ren couldn't help but smile bitterly at this time. Don't talk about you. I'm still very curious now. Miss Yu put down the document in her hand and smiled. There is another reason, because of the question you asked at the venue in the afternoon. Madame Ren couldn't help blushing. Miss Yu said casually, this question is very abrupt and even silly. No one should ask it. At least, even if they want to ask, they can only hold it silently. But only you, Miss Ren, asked it without any scruples. We all agree that Miss Ren is very brave and will be an upright person. Such a person shouldn't make false reports. You flatter me. Renziling calmed down at this time and said slowly, the only thing we need to do as a media company is to report the truth. I hope so. Miss Yu smiled slightly, then made an inviting gesture. Don't be reserved, you can ask any questions. Madame Ren also signaled with her eyes at this time to let Lizzie and old Q hit the board and set up the camera. As for Renziling, she smoothed her hair behind her ear and sighed slowly. Then, she said seriously, first question, Miss Elizabeth, I heard that you are a real vampire. Then, may I ask, until now, how much fresh blood have you drunk? In an instant, Miss Yu frowned. This woman, she really asked casually? This question really discounted Elizabeth's character. When Miss Yu was about to remind this female reporter of some necessary rules, the vampire girl had already replied, only one. One? Madame Ren was taken aback subconsciously, then her brain quickly thought, one means, maybe there is a person who can provide you with blood for a long time and steadily. The vampire girl shook her head and said, no, I only drank it once, and that time was to save me. I have been relying on the blood products provided by the clan since I was a child. You said it was to save you. Can you be specific? Madame Ren's eyes were burning with the soul of gossip at this time. That time was actually a big brother. She was suddenly interrupted. Yu Xiaojie said indifferently at this time, Miss Ren, this is Miss Elizabeth's personal matter. It's not the purpose of this interview. Renziling nodded and immediately said after thinking about it, according to what I know, the Magician Association is the enforcer of the inhuman territory. I have a question. At present, in the inhuman territory, in addition to your Magician Association, there are many different inhuman races, and they also have their own governance systems. At present, the world's transcendence and inhumans intend to integrate into modern civilization. Then the question is, for the vampire race with a long history like the 13 clans, in the future, how will the Magician Association reconcile the problem of vampires needing to drink the blood of living people? Should they tolerate it? Or should they stop it? If they stop it, will it lead to a conflict between the two sides? This woman, Miss Yu, couldn't help but frown at this time. This meeting seemed to be a mistake. Chapter 1977. She really dares to ask such a question. This was the room arranged for the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master and the Ice Tower Master. At this time, the two Tower Masters of the Magician Association were watching the interview in the reception room. Elizabeth was Hui Yao's closed-door student. Needless to say, she was the leader of the next generation of the Magician Association. Even if this vampire girl did not necessarily have the qualifications, it would not stop the Tower Masters from favoring her. However, this interview was on behalf of the Magician Association. Even if they wanted to cultivate her, they couldn't completely let her go. "Why are you in such a hurry?" the Ice Tower Master said indifferently. "This isn't a live interview. No matter what is asked or what is answered, it will naturally disappear when it's time." This woman has directly asked about the attitude of the underwater city towards the black card at the meeting. This time, she is targeting why Lisabeth's vampire identity. I seriously suspect that this female reporter was sent by the administration of Shenzhou to make trouble. The Ice Tower Master said angrily, "Don't forget we chose this person ourselves. No one forced us to call this female reporter, so how can you punish us? Besides, the problem of the 13 clans has always been there. Even if this problem isn't raised today, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, someone will definitely raise it on the spot. Didn't we already consider this problem before coming to the meeting?" With that, the Ice Tower Master suddenly gently held Scarlet Blaze's hand. "Since we want to pass the future to the next generation, we should give this little girl more confidence. How long can you take over the association's affairs? Scarlet Blaze, we will have to give up sooner or later." The irritated Scarlet Blaze Tower Master scratched his head and said with a buzzing sound, "I really want to drag that bitch Stella out for a fight now." Beating up Stella when he was unhappy. In the world, only the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master would do that. The Ice Tower Master shook her head and smiled bitterly. She immediately continued to stare at the screen. In her opinion, although this question was a bit sharp, it wasn't the worst. It was difficult for ordinary people to fully understand the many rules of the extraordinary and inhuman world after just 1 or 2 days of the summit meeting. But to be able to think of this aspect, the reaction was already quite fast. The really bad question is whether ordinary people can accept extraordinary creatures into the current ruling class. The Ice Tower Master's eyes gradually deepened. At this moment, the door of the room suddenly opened, and then a figure quickly walked in. The expressions of the two Tower Masters both changed. In the reception room, facing Renziling's question, Elizabeth was a little nervous and subconsciously looked at Zhong Luoyue next to her. "If Miss Elizabeth feels that it's inconvenient for you to reveal this issue, you can also choose to avoid it." Unexpectedly, Renziling suddenly said. Miss Yu and Elizabeth looked at Renziling in surprise at the same time. Chief Editor Ren said helplessly at this time, "After all, I'm just here to do an interview, not to stir up conflicts between humans and transcendents. I asked this question because of my belief in my profession, and not getting an exact answer is a common thing in my profession." Elizabeth thought for a while and said, "Miss Ren, I'm sorry. Regarding your question, there will be further discussions in the summit meeting in the future, so it's not convenient for us to respond to you at the moment. But our Magician Association will definitely try our best to reconcile the conflict between the two sides, and I also believe that the representatives of the 13 families must also know." Auntie Ren nodded and immediately said, "Let's skip this question. I heard that the Magician Association plans to build a school that recruits students all over the world, right? I don't know if your association can now reveal some of the admission standards of this school?" This question was normal. It was also in line with Zhong Luyue's initial expectations. "At present, we tentatively plan to recruit the first batch of students in Europe." This time, it was Ms. Yu who answered the question, Because the best age to learn magic is between the ages of 10 and 12, this is also the range of our enrollment. Once you pass the qualification test of our association, all the school fees will be waived. Renziling was still taking notes seriously for fear of missing a word. Transcendence would be integrated into modern civilization, and humans would usher in a new transcendence civilization. In her opinion, if the transcendents wanted to safely pass through this initial stage, the best way was to give ordinary humans benefits. Give them a way to master transcendence as well. Only when they became the same kind would the fear disappear. The idea of a magic school was obviously able to attract a lot of favorability in human society. Then, what kind of people are considered to have magic talent? In other words, would people with magical abilities behave differently? For example, are they born with magic power but don't know how to activate it? Such talents who are born with magic power have always been quite rare. Zhong Luoyue said slowly, if such talents really appear, we will naturally find a way to recruit them. But for magicians, most of them evolved from ordinary people. Magicians have come to where they are today through a long period of learning, mastering, and studying different magic warlocks. So, we will release the specific content of the test in the future. In other words, even ordinary people can become magicians? Renziling couldn't help but be very curious at this time. For example, can someone like me also be a magician? Of course. Zhong Luoyue smiled slightly at this time and said, even if Ms. Ren has never learned magic, under certain conditions, you can activate the ability of magic. Really? Auntie Ren suddenly became interested. Zhong Luoyue chuckled at this time and immediately took out a small wooden box. It seemed that she had come prepared. Inside the open box, there were 3 tear-shaped green stones and a small circular dial. These 3 are emeralds with magic reaction. As for this dial, it is engraved with a fixed warlock through the hands of a magician. Zhong Luoyue picked up the 2 at this time and embedded one of the emeralds in the dial. There is also a designed filling position on the dial. It's done like this. Ordinary people can also use magic with this dial. This is equivalent to a weapon. Auntie Ren was surprised. Can I see it? Of course. Zhong Luoyue pushed the box and the dial in front of Renziling. The city is in a state of prohibition, and the magic on the dial can't be activated. Ms. Ren, you can rest assured and look at it. Renziling looked at it for a moment and exclaimed, according to what you said, even if an ordinary person has a lot of these magical gemstones on hand and has these devices engraved with magic, in theory, they can also be regarded as a magician? In theory, you can say that. Miss Yu smiled slightly and said, in the history of the association, there was a female magician who defeated the enemy by consuming a lot of gemstones in every battle. It can be said that she used money to smash the opponent to death, but in fact, this female magician's magic power is very limited. What the F***ck? Old Q, who was hammering the board, couldn't help but ask at this time, may I ask if this female magician was born in Japan and her surname is Nagasaka? Miss Yu couldn't help but be startled at this time. She immediately shook her head and said, I'm not very clear about this. I just heard some rumors occasionally. But this theory does exist. What about magic replenishment? Magic replenishment. Old Q looked like he was possessed by a ghost at this time. His eyes were wide open, his face was red, and he was panting like a bull. Magic replenishment. Zhong Luoyue couldn't help but frown. Renziling directly stepped on Old Q's toes at this time and smiled awkwardly. My subordinate has some mental problems and occasionally makes mistakes. Don't mind. Zhong Luoyue dismissed it with a smile. She suddenly said, Ms. Ren, I'll give this set of dial to you as a return gift for today's interview. Give it to me? Renziling couldn't help but be surprised at this time. The inherent magic on it belongs to the defensive type. After activation, it will produce a light shield similar to a boundary. Zhong Luoyue said casually, The function is very simple and only used for defense, but it can still be used to withstand the impact of an ordinary car at 100 kilometers per hour. This gift is too big, I can't accept it. Madame Ren thought carefully and shook her head to refuse. Zhong Luoyue said, "We hope to be able to have a good relationship with the media. Ms. Ren is a smart person. In fact, you should know that it doesn't matter if you accept these small gifts. Just treat it as a small gift for a small press conference. Besides, you're going to report on the Magician Association. Shouldn't you also experience the magic ability yourself so that you can make a better judgment? As a reporter, experiencing it personally is also a basic duty. Then I really have no choice but to accept it?" Ren Xiling couldn't help but smile bitterly, but she didn't mention any more words of refusal. Next were some conventional interviews, and there were also some miscellaneous talks about the vampire girl's personal hobbies and interests. Before they knew it, the interview had already gone on for nearly 40 minutes. Ren Xiling didn't know what to do with the media after she took up so much time. Anyway, this was the Magician Association's arrangement, and she couldn't control it. She just had to ask whatever she wanted. "Ms. Ren, it's almost time. Let me see the last question." Zhong Luoyue looked at the time at this time. Ren Xiling nodded, but she didn't rush to speak. Instead, she pondered for a moment before slowly asking, "Excuse me, the senior management of the Magician Association. I mean, do you plan to enter the senior management of human society?" Zhong Luoyue's smile suddenly disappeared, and Elizabeth opened her mouth. Ren Xiling said seriously, "This is my personal question. I promise that it won't be written in the report. Everyone in the Magician Association has different means of longevity. I want to know if you, who are close to longevity, think that ordinary people should actually be ruled." It was quiet for a long time. I believe that no matter what kind of race they are, since they can exist in this world at the same time, there must be a reason behind it. In the silence, Elizabeth's voice slowly sounded, "I also believe that no matter which race it is, the pursuit of freedom must be their nature. The world's voice will not be unified, whether it is between a single race or between different races." Actually, the vampire girl didn't finish her words, but she was interrupted by Ren Xiling. "That's enough, Ms. Elizabeth." Ren Xiling waved her hand and slowly sighed. "I said, this is just my personal question. I know that reporters are a very annoying profession, especially for the interviewees. I'm sorry for the trouble today." "In that case, let me send you out," Zhong Luoyue immediately said seriously. "I'm also very happy that tonight's interview can be completed smoothly. Boss, let's go back like this?" Old Q said while driving. Auntie Ren looked at the wooden box in her hand at this time and thought for a while. "Why don't we go to the suburbs?" Old Q shuddered and said subconsciously, "Boss, you're not thinking of trying this thing, are you?" "Why not?" Auntie Ren bit her lips at this time and said, "It sounds so mysterious, let's try it? I'll treat you to supper later." "Supper?" Roar. Lizzie suddenly came up. "Go away." Auntie Ren pressed Lizzie's face and pushed her away, then said, "Old Q, come down, I'll drive. I haven't driven for a long time." "Don't." Zhong Luoyue was in front of the hotel door, watching Ren Xiling and the other two get in the car and drive away. Only then did she return to the hotel. At this time, an entourage of the association came to Zhong Luoyue's side and whispered, "Ms. Yu, the people from the administration almost pulled out their guns just now." "Pull out their guns? When?" Zhong Luoyue frowned subconsciously. "When the last question was asked. They have been watching the interview, as if they were afraid of us taking action. It seems that they are protecting her." Zhong Luoyue muttered, "But what is so special about this woman that the administration of Kelowna is protecting her? If she is an important person, it is impossible for her to act recklessly with such an identity." Ms. Yu stopped at this time and stood in the aisle of the hotel. Suddenly, she ordered, Go and see if you can find more information about this female reporter in addition to the official background information. Okay, I'll arrange it right away. At this time, Zhong Luoyue's phone suddenly rang. This was a number that rarely called her phone, but it was definitely not a strange number. This was the number from the Ice Tower Master. Zhong Luoyue quickly picked up the call. The Ice Tower Master said in a light voice, "Regarding this female reporter, you don't need to investigate anymore, just leave it at that." She didn't rush to ask why, nor did she show any displeasure. Instead, she turned all the questions and displeasure into a light sentence. "Okay, I understand, Master Ice. Ms. Yu?" Zhong Luoyue put away the phone and said expressionlessly, "No need to investigate, just let her be." In the luxurious suite of the hotel, the Ice Tower Master slowly put down the phone and frowned, saying in a cold voice, "Shinryu, I've done as you said. Now, can you move your foot?" At this time, Shinryu of Kelowna was stepping on the back of the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master, pressing him to the floor, like a mountain king. "Little Scarlet Blaze, I didn't do it on purpose, I'm just doing it for your own good. You'll definitely be grateful to me in the future." Kelowna of Shinryu looked at the light and said, "You don't want me to go to the inhuman domain, to plunder again, right?" "Did our inhuman domain owe you in our previous life?" The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's voice suddenly sounded in the room. Kelowna of Shinryu of Kelowna of course couldn't take it anymore. But she really did put in a lot of effort. Okay, we're all good friends." Long Shiro retracted his leg. "Don't worry, I'll give you 50 kilograms of aphrodisiac as an apology." This is too much. This is too much. I'm going all out today." The Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's eyes were red, as if he was going to jump down from this building with Kelowna of Shinryu in his arms. Long Shiro used a big move at this time. "I still have a medicine that can give birth to a child. Do you want to try it? It's been so many years, don't you want to have a child?" "Are you serious?" The Ice Tower Master frowned and pressed the Scarlet Blaze Tower Master down at the same time. Anyway, there were still several bottles of powder collected from Luo Dance last time. This thing was strong enough and useful, because in her opinion, the reason why they couldn't give birth to a child was because they didn't sow enough. If they didn't sow hard enough, how could there be a harvest? ######PS1. That's right, it's him again. Guess whose cuteness it is, the insatiable sugar daddy. Thank you, sugar daddy, for the cuteness of the servant girl equals pass the tea. PS2, 1/1. Chapter 1978. Finally, after much effort, Long Shiro left the room of the Crimson Blaze Tower owner and his wife. Consultant Long looked very tired when she left. He wondered what she had experienced with the two tower masters in the room. Kelowna's Shinryu looked indifferent. This was a hotel near the river. The night wind was a bit messy downstairs. Long Shiro leaned against the railing alone, and her hair was messy. Several agents from the administration were watching from afar, not daring to approach. Kelowna's Shinryu took out a small box from his pocket, and crumpled it into a ball, throwing it into the trash can in a bad mood. Kelowna's Shinryu didn't even hit the target. A quick-witted agent walked forward and took out a bag of flowers from his windbreaker. "Consultant, I have some here." Long Shiro squinted at him, which made the agent who handed her the cigarette feel uneasy. Suddenly, without saying a word, she grabbed the whole bag of flower seeds and put one in her mouth. At this time, she seemed to have thought of something and stretched out her hand again. I'll do it. The agent shivered and took out a lighter to light the cigarette. However, the true dragon of China snatched the lighter away quickly. Then, as if he was in the way, he swept his palm toward the investigator as if he was sweeping the floor. The investigator's heart skipped a beat. He ran back to where his colleagues were with a gloomy face. He was about to say something, but the moment he opened his mouth stopped moving. The wind by the river was not only messy, but also fierce. Kelowna's Shinryu lowered her head to light the cigarette, but she couldn't light it. She had already turned her body to block the wind several times. At this moment, a hand holding a windproof lighter quietly appeared in front of Long Shirua. She subconsciously held the cigarette in her mouth and reached out to the light. She took a deep breath but didn't swallow it. The smoke was released from her mouth instantly. She inhaled the smoke for the second time, and then a long smoke dragon slowly came out of her mouth. Troublesome, Long Shirua said indifferently. Then, she looked at the agents of the administration who were standing still like performing art in the distance. Boss Luo just smiled and didn't say anything. Kelowna's Shinryu took another deep puff, and then groaned, "Why aren't you wearing a coat?" "A coat?" Boss Luo asked curiously. "It's not suitable to wear a coat on a summer night." "How can I block the wind if I don't wear a coat?" Long Shirua glared at him and said unhappily. Boss Luo paused and then chuckled and said casually, "If Ms. Long wants to do it like this, we can do it again." "Who wants to do it again with you?" Kelowna's Shinryu snorted, and took 2 puffs of the cigarette. "You're so nice that you're willing to move out of your kennel. You're probably not here for me, right? Is it because of that woman?" She knew that she couldn't avoid this matter. She didn't really want to avoid it. Since that 10 minutes of darkness, she had no way to find this despicable guy. Kelowna's Shinryu had also lost her power in the Forbidden City, so she couldn't rely on her intuition to search. Maybe she could only let him take the initiative to find her. Even if she had to use that kind of barbaric method. "Ms. Long, because of your words, her life will be enriched." Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "It's bad, why are you saying it so nicely?" Long Shirua snorted, "So? Are you here to settle the score? Do whatever you want. I've already said it and I won't take it back. Just come at me." Boss Luo looked at her with a smile. Kelowna's Shinryu looked away guiltily and muttered, "What are you thinking?" "What do you mean, Ms. Long?" "Of course it's me." Kelowna's Shinryu opened her mouth and then paused, biting her lips. "I mean, what do you think about the black card? Didn't you keep a low profile in the past? Why did you deliberately expose yourself this time, and to the entire world?" Boss Luo blinked. "We're in the voice business, of course we advertise to generate income and increase sales. What's wrong with that?" "What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Don't you have any idea of what's wrong with that?" The true dragon of the godly land rolled his eyes and said grumpily, "It's still brewing and fermenting. But what about the future? Don't tell me you didn't think of what the world would become in the fight for the 99 black cards. Aren't you afraid of ruining the world?" "I plan to leave this world for a while," Boss Luo suddenly said. The flower in Shinryu's mouth fell from her mouth. She opened her mouth. What did you say?" "I plan to leave this world for a while," Boss Luo said clearly. Her mind was in a mess, as if she couldn't think of anything. She could only rely on her instincts. "Where are you going? When are you coming back?" "The destination is not set, but it won't be long." Boss Luo thought for a while. "But it won't be long. Although the black cards are scattered all over the world, they won't be found within 3 months. I'll give this world time to prepare." 3 months, that means you'll be away for at least 3 months? Long Shirua frowned, but she seemed to be relieved. The previous owner would also travel between different worlds. Boss Luo said, "This is a tradition, I can't stay in the same place forever." Kelowna's Shinryu was silent, she wanted to say something but stopped. Finally, she said hesitantly, "If you run away like this, what about her, your adoptive mother? You're willing to leave her here alone?" "Don't I already have you, Miss Long?" Boss Luo smiled. "Should I call you sister?" "Who wants to be your sister?" Kelowna's Shinryu's hair stood on end, her eyes widened. Boss Luo said casually, "We should be responsible for our words. Misfortune comes from careless talk, Miss Long should know." "Responsible?" Long Shirua's eyes dimmed, her voice also weakened. "Is this why you never give a direct response? What are you afraid of?" "Not really." Boss Luo shook his head. Miss Long should know what attracts me, to the extent that I can't bear to part with it. But I don't think it's what you want. You. Kelowna's Shinryu was stunned. Her hair stood on end for the second time. She said angrily, I knew it, you're really a sea king. Miss Long's focus is indeed novel. Boss Luo smiled, then he sighed. No matter what, after this meeting, I'll be leaving for a while. I believe that Miss Long won't be so annoyed when I'm not around. Thank you so much. Kelowna's Shinryu replied expressionlessly. She turned around, crossed her arms and snorted. It's great that I don't have to bother you when I'm eating. Maybe I can even eat 2 more bowls. For a long time, there was no sound behind her. Kelowna's Shinryu sensed something and didn't turn around for a long time. Until a long time later, she sighed and turned around silently. She saw a windproof lighter lying quietly on the railing by the river. She was annoyed, so she scratched her head hard until her dandruff seemed to attack. She muttered, Damn it, why did I take her as my godmother? I dug a hole for myself. She dug a hole for herself, so she had to jump into it. What are you laughing at? Go and pass her a cigarette if you dare. Do you dare? I dare. The agent repeated his words, but his colleagues still looked like they were trying to hold back their laughter. When did Consultant Long disappear? The agent quickly turned around, only to see Kelowna's Shinryu had disappeared from the railing by the river. He patted his head in annoyance. What a loss! The whole pack of pretentious Huazi was gone. He had just opened it, and he had only smoked one. The screeching sound of brakes sounded in the empty mountain road. Old Q, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was holding the passenger seat with both hands, shivering as he breathed in the air. In the back seat, Li Zi's face was pressed against the car window. Madame Ren got out of the car comfortably and stretched herself. It would be perfect if there was a bottle of cold beer at this time. She quickly put the small wooden box in front of the car and opened it, taking out the magic carving inside. This magic carving was only the size of a palm, but it was bigger than the brooch she wore on her chest. Ren Xiling held the carving high and looked at it under the moonlight. A prop that could allow ordinary people to use magic power in a second. She never thought that this thing would fall into her hands. At this time, Old Q and Li Zi climbed out of the car one after another. Old Q even rubbed his stomach and urged, Boss, hurry up. Let's go back after the experience. It's not forbidden outside. God knows how many transcendent and non-human creatures are hiding. I heard that these transcendent creatures are very territorial. Maybe we'll accidentally intrude into their territory. Go away. Do you think they are animals? Territorial. Madame Ren responded angrily. Didn't the fairy wearing the clown mask say that he didn't want anyone to cause trouble in this city? It's only been 2 days. How can there be an iron-headed kid? That's true, but what if there's really an iron-headed kid? Old Q didn't say anything else and started arguing openly. Don't make trouble. Madame Ren waved her hand and immediately ordered, Go to the trunk and take out my baseball bat. Let's try the power of this magic carving. Old Q didn't care why there was a baseball bat in the car. In the boss backpack, there were pepper spray, taser, and so on. The baseball bat was quickly taken out, but there was a problem. By the way, how do I use this thing, chanting spells and so on? Madame Ren flipped the carving in her hand up and down at this time. Why don't you stick it on your head, then concentrate and try to activate it? Li Zi suddenly said, I watched it on TV. What TV did you watch? Madame Ren said suspiciously, but she still followed Li Zi's method and stuck the carving in front of her forehead and immediately concentrated. In an instant, a gentle blue light was emitted from the carving plate. Like flowing water, it covered her entire body in an instant. After that, it expanded a little and turned into a huge goose egg-shaped light barrier, completely wrapping around her. Madame Ren looked at this scene in amazement. She immediately danced and said excitedly, Quick! Quick! Old Q, F***CK. No, hit me with all your strength. Then I'm coming. I'm really coming. Old Q swallowed his saliva at this time and held the hard baseball bat with both hands. He couldn't help but feel that his mouth was dry. He looked nervous but also eager to try and shouted, "Boss! I'm coming!" At this time, the metal baseball bat was aimed at the blue light shield on Madame Wren's body. The moment they touched, there was no sound. After the blue light ball shook slightly, it instantly absorbed the force of the hit. As for old Q, he took a step or two back and stared at it in disbelief. Damn, this thing can reflect damage. At this time, Auntie Wren's eyes lit up. With this toy, she would be able to go deep into those dangerous places to conduct secret investigations, such as drug manufacturing factories, arms trading sites, and so on. Next year's Pulitzer Prize seemed to be in her bag. Old Q, quick, quick! Again. Hit me with the car, hit me with all your strength. Miss You said that this thing can stop a car with a speed of 100 kilometers. Quick! Step on the accelerator. I'll be right there. Old Q ran to the interview car with excitement at this time. He started the car, licked his lips, and stepped on the accelerator. Lizzie leaned against the guardrail as if she was an idiot. She opened a bag of chips and started to eat them. The moon was quite round tonight. When can we finish playing and go for supper? Boss. I'm coming. Old Q, who had accelerated for a distance and let the interview car reach a speed of 100 kilometers, shouted loudly at this time. Needless to say, although she was mentally prepared, when faced with the interview car that was rushing quickly, Madame Wren's scalp was still numb. Finally, the interview car hit the blue light shield fiercely. The blue light shield suddenly caved in, but the dent didn't touch Madame Wren and instantly recovered its shape. Then Renziling saw old Q and Lizzie, and the interview car was quickly moving away from her. On the winding mountain road, a glowing ball was crazily bouncing and rolling down at this time. Damn! Help! Lizzie held the guardrail with both hands and tiptoed to look. Oh, not good. Sister Wren rolled down. And it's very fast. Like a rubber ball, Renziling quickly disappeared from the sight of Lizzie and old Q. Only her shout echoed in the mountain. Old Q shivered and said with a trembling voice, Lizzie, look at me. Do you think I still have a chance to go to work tomorrow? At this time, Rico's face was dark and Kenji said, You are already dead. Bang, bang, bang. The ball that emitted blue light bounced over the small forest, over the small stream, and rolled into a paddy field that had already been harvested at the foot of the mountain. After rolling for a long time, it finally rolled into a fish pond. The light shield also slowly disappeared at this time. Madame Wren climbed up from the fish pond with difficulty. She was drenched, and suddenly bent down to spit out a rainbow at the fish pond. This damn old Q is really ruthless. You don't have to go to work tomorrow. Ugh. After a while, Madame Wren collapsed on the edge of the fish pond. She subconsciously took out her mobile phone to check the time and call for help, but there was no signal in the wilderness. At this moment, a bright flashlight shone on Auntie Wren's body. She blocked the light with her hand, and only vaguely saw a small figure walking towards her at this time. It gradually became clear. What Auntie Wren saw was a 13 or 14-year-old girl with a small braid, a bamboo basket on her back, small cloth shoes, and a slightly dirty face. However, it could be seen that she was definitely a beauty. Ah, girl, where is this? Madame Wren was startled and immediately said, I came out to camp and got lost. I accidentally fell into the fish pond. Can you help me? I'm a good person. The little girl nodded gently at this time and hesitated. Come with me. Madame Wren smiled slightly, got up and introduced herself. My surname is Wren, you can call me Sister Ling. What's your name? My name is... The little girl hesitated for a moment, and finally said with a complicated expression, Ling. Sister Ling, you can call me Xiaoxi. What's wrong with this little girl? Why is her expression so stiff? Madame Wren couldn't help but wonder. Chapter 1979. The road in this wilderness was not easy to walk on. Moreover, Auntie Ren had soaked in the fish pond, so her whole body was wet. There were many mosquitoes around. After walking for 7 or 8 minutes, the hot and humid environment had already made Auntie Ren complain in her heart. Xiaoxi, who was carrying a bamboo basket in front of her, was walking briskly. Auntie Ren, who was from the city, could not compare with her at all. By the way, Xiaoxi, why are you wandering outside alone so late at night? Aren't you afraid? Looking for food, Xiaoxi said without looking back. I wanted to catch some eels, but I didn't find any. With that, Xiaoxi suddenly stopped, then jumped into the ground and reached out to dig something in the ground. After a while, Xiaoxi skillfully pulled out 2 medium-sized sweet potatoes from the ground and threw them directly into the bamboo basket. Then she smiled and said, "Okay, let's continue." Auntie Ren wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she didn't say anything. She just nodded gently and followed Xiaoxi all the way. After about 5 minutes of walking, a mud house with yellow mud walls appeared in front of Auntie Ren. The courtyard walls were also piled up with mud, and a wooden door was crooked and unlatched. "Xiaoxi, you live here?" Ren Xiling asked hesitantly. "Yes." Xiaoxi turned around and nodded. "Wait for a while, I'll make something to eat first. I cooked some porridge when I came out. It's almost done." She watched the little girl with a ponytail quickly walk into the small mud courtyard at this time. In the corner of the courtyard, there was a stove piled up with stones. A blackened iron pot was placed on top of the stove, and the smell of firewood was very strong. Ren Xiling looked around. There was still no signal on the phone, but the flashlight on the phone was obviously working. The courtyard was suddenly illuminated a lot. Half of the mud house in front of her had completely collapsed, while the other half was intact. Madame Ren's heart trembled as she gently pushed open the door of this half of the house and looked inside. Suddenly, a stuffy smell hit her in the face. The ground was also muddy, but it was pressed flat. The top was covered with the most common kind of plastic bag that contained fertilizer. In the corner of the house, a few pieces of dirty rubber blocks were put together. It seemed to be a bed. There were several candles beside it, some long and some short. Some clothes were neatly folded and placed in a corner. In front of the only window in the house, it was covered with some plastic sheeting. There was also a wooden stool about 30 centimeters high. On top of it was an old book. Beside it were some other old books. Ren Xiling saw the light bulb on the beam, but the switch she found on the wall could not turn it on. She knew that there must be a power outage here. "Xiaoxi." Ren Xiling couldn't stand it anymore. She walked out of the room and saw Xiaoxi squatting in front of the stove, blowing the fire with a bamboo tube. "Are you hungry, big sister? The sweet potatoes have just been roasted and we still have to wait for a long time. How about you eat some porridge first?" Xiaoxi thought about it and said. Auntie Ren silently walked to the stove, covered her palm with her sleeves, and opened the iron pot. It was indeed porridge, but it was very sparse, and there were also some wild vegetables that she couldn't name in it. There were a lot of wild vegetables, and they even smelled a little sweet. You usually eat these?" Ren Xiling looked at the little girl with braids in disbelief. "The cured meat at home is finished." Xiaoxi shook her head. "I didn't find any eels tonight, otherwise there would be meat to eat. There are 2 chickens in the backyard, but the eggs have been eaten and they haven't laid yet. Some time ago, some big brothers and big sisters brought some noodles, rice and canned oil and salt, but they also finished them." "What about your parents?" Ren Xiling had realized something, but she still couldn't help asking. "Relatives? Amma passed away a long time ago," Xiaoxi said calmly. "Appa went out to work, but he didn't come back for a long time. When Grandma left 3 years ago, Appa asked someone to bring some money back, and then there was no news. This house, it collapsed last year. There's no village nearby? The village committee doesn't care about you? The village is far away, and the people in the village don't like to talk to me. In fact, it doesn't matter, I won't starve to death alone. When I'm hungry, I can eat fish and shrimp, and sometimes I can catch a few quails. There are also many things to eat in the field. Sometimes, some people will bring some food here. Those guys only know how to bring some food. Ren Xiling snorted. Xiaoxi didn't say anything, just stood up and walked silently to the side, where there were many dry branches and wood. Xiaoxi grabbed a branch and broke it with her knees. Xiaoxi's movements were very agile, and Auntie Ren's eyes couldn't help but redden. This child's movements were so agile and skillful that she was so skillful that it made her heart ache. Old Ren was also an orphan when she was a child. Before she was admitted to the orphanage, she also had a bad experience. Later, she was admitted to the orphanage. Probably because she was far away, she was noticed by a good person from Hong Kong, who then sponsored her life, and she became who she was now. Xiaoxi, how old are you this year? 13. Looking at the little girl's bright eyes that were a little dirty from the smoke, Auntie Ren asked curiously, Xiaoxi, have you ever thought about leaving here? Xiaoxi shook her head. If I leave, my father won't see me when he comes back. Auntie Ren frowned and said, What if your father doesn't come back? What will you do? Xiaoxi smiled and said, When I grow up, I will go to the city to work. When I have money, I can find my father. What's your father's name? Auntie Ren quickly said, I know a lot of people, maybe I can help you find out. Really? Xiaoxi's eyes suddenly lit up. My father's name is Su Xingqiu, and he's from the second group of village roosters. How? At this moment, a sharp whistling sound suddenly came from the hill not far away, which made Auntie Ren's scalp tingle. It was dark all around, and there seemed to be countless unknown things hidden. Ren Xiling's heart trembled. Xiaoxi, aren't you afraid of living here alone? At first, I was a little scared, but then I got used to it. Xiaoxi shook her head. But recently, this sound has become more frequent at night. Sometimes when I wake up in the middle of the night, I see some green lights floating by. I was so scared that I didn't dare to go out, but it's fine during the day. You can't live here anymore. Auntie Ren grabbed Xiaoxi's wrist at this time. Do you know how many extraordinary creatures are hiding outside the city now? What are extraordinary creatures? Xiaoxi asked confusedly. You didn't see the electricity. Ren Xiling blurted out, but then she suddenly realized, by the way, if no one tells you, you can't see anything at all here. With that, Ren Xiling took a deep breath, pressed her hands on Xiaoxi's shoulders, and said seriously, Listen, Xiaoxi, it's very dangerous outside now. The world has changed, it's not the world we used to live in. There are monsters in this world, eating people, and immortals. They are all very dangerous. Maybe some of them will specially catch children like you to eat. Xiaoxi opened her mouth and immediately laughed. Big sister, you're telling a story. Auntie Ren was about to say something, but at this time, she was suddenly shocked. She suddenly hugged Xiaoxi and then rolled to the side. At this time, a black shadow suddenly rushed out and knocked over the stove, knocking over the iron pot and breaking the stove. The burning firewood scattered all over the ground. What's this? Xiaoxi exclaimed at this time. What a big, big rat! In front of her, there was a rat the size of an adult wolf dog in the yard. The big rat in front of her had red eyes, and its claws were black and cold. At this time, it was glaring covetously with its teeth bared. Feeling Xiaoxi's trembling body in her arms, Ren Xiling at this time gritted her teeth, quickly took out the carving plate in her arms, and suddenly stuck it on her forehead. At this time, the huge rat rushed over, but the blue light shield happened to be formed at this time. The huge rat rushed on the light shield, and then was bounced back by the power of the light shield. However, the red-eyed rat didn't give up. After it landed, it rushed over crazily again. At this time, Ren Xiling held Xiaoxi tightly in her arms. She didn't know whether the carving magic given by Miss Yu could be blocked, so she could only pray in her heart. Outside, the huge rat's cry sounded again and again. After a long time, Ren Xiling slowly opened her eyes. What she saw was the scarlet eyes of the huge rat. The rat hit again, and then was bounced back by the blue light shield magic. This time, after the huge rat was bounced back, it seemed to roar a few times unwillingly, and then directly dug into the soil and drilled into it. But before this huge rat finally left, its tail suddenly swept away the firewood and directly crashed into Xiaoxi's house. After a while, the house was on fire. "Ah, my house!" Xiaoxi screamed at this time. But how could Ren Xiling dare to stay here at this time? She held Xiaoxi tightly and pulled her out. The fire inside was getting bigger and bigger, and soon it was completely burning. Xiaoxi's face was pale. At this time, she stared blankly at the fire in front of her, and suddenly knelt on the ground. At this time, Auntie Ren put the carving plate on her forehead and didn't dare to let it go. She could only endure like this, for fear that the horrible big rat would appear again. The interview car hurriedly braked, and old Q and Lizzie in the car rushed out at this time. Ren Xiling heaved a sigh of relief at this moment. She put down the plate and sat on the ground. The light curtain then disappeared. "Boss, what's going on? We saw the fire from afar." "Sister Ren, don't say it first," Ren Xiling said weakly at this time. "Hurry up, take this child, hurry back to the city. There's a big rat." "Big rat?" Lizzie and old Q looked at each other with a puzzled look. The interview car slowly stopped in an alley in the old city. There were police cars patrolling on this road during the curfew. The interview car was indeed checked several times, but Auntie Ren was quite popular. The police cars they met along the way were all driven by acquaintances, so they arrived at the destination smoothly. At this time, Ren Xiling and the other two took Xiao Shi, who was in a daze, and walked into an old building. "I used to live in this house with my husband, but now it's temporarily vacant." Auntie Ren turned on the light in the living room and pulled Xiao Shi to sit down. Then she asked Lizzie to boil some water and old Q to cook something to eat. She looked at Xiao Shi and said, "Child, you can live here for the time being. You also see how dangerous the place you live is." Xiaoxi was curled up and her face was pale. She nodded silently as if she had really listened to her words. Ren Xiling hugged Xiao Shi lovingly and patted her back. "Don't worry, I'll try my best to help you find your father. You can live here. Now the city is absolutely safe, and those monsters can't come in. Even if they come in, they have no power." At this time, Lizzie quietly waved to her. Ren Xiling tidied up Xiaoxi's messy hair and comforted her with a few words of comfort before she walked over. "Sister Ren, are you really going to take this child in?" Lizzie asked curiously at this time. "What else can I do?" Auntie Ren said angrily. "Since this matter has happened, I can't just ignore it. Besides, if it's you, can you bear to see this child stay in such a dangerous place alone? She doesn't even have that shabby home. Let's talk about it later. I'll see if I can help her find her relatives. If not, I'll see if there's any welfare organization willing to accept her." Lizzie tilted her head and looked through the partition screen of the living room at the little girl who was sitting in the corner of the chair, hugging her knees and burying her head. She suddenly said, "I don't think she's very afraid." "What are you talking about?" Auntie Ren reached out and knocked on the head of this foodie. "Don't you have any sympathy? Your rent will be increased by 30%. The extra money will be used to buy food for Xiao Shi." Lizzie suddenly widened her eyes. She could kill her, but she couldn't deprive her of money for snacks. "Wow!" Lizzie burst into tears at once. "I'm so pitiful. I'm also an orphan who drifted here alone. I thought I found a very good job and met a senior who was very kind to me. I thought I wouldn't have to live a wandering life like before. I didn't expect. Wow! I'm so pitiful." Auntie Ren immediately rubbed her forehead painfully. Okay. The rent won't be increased. I'll take care of myself." "Thank you, Sister Ren." She gave her a sweet smile. Ren Xiling rolled her eyes and thought for a while. "It's late now, and it's not convenient outside the curfew. You and old Q can sleep here tonight, and we'll go directly from here to the venue tomorrow. Okay. I'll check the room, Lizzie said with a face of joy. You can sleep on the floor. Auntie Rin stared at her, grabbed the back of Lizzie's collar and pulled her back. I don't like outsiders to sleep in my room. That's my and my husband's love nest. It's sacred and can't be violated. Isn't there another room? That's for Xiaoxi. Auntie Rin snorted. How can you let a homeless child sleep on the sofa? TSK. Tonight you can sleep here, Xiaoxi. Leading the little girl to a neat little room, Auntie Rin said softly at this time, this room used to be my son's. He loves cleanliness very much. You can rest assured that there won't be anything messy here. Xiaoxi was looking at the room in front of her with a strange expression, as if she was a little confused. Sit down first, I'll find some clothes for you. I should have some old clothes here. Wait for a while. With that, Auntie Rin walked out quickly. Xiaoxi swallowed her saliva at this time and slowly walked to the bedside. After tentatively pressing the mattress, she sat down little by little. The moment she sat down, Xiaoxi instantly jumped up, and then turned around vigilantly. She looked up and down, then turned around and looked up again. She lay down, lifted the sheet and looked in. Then she opened the curtain and looked out of the window nervously. After a while, nothing seemed to happen and Xiaoxi slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, Xiaoxi's sharp eyes kicked the wardrobe next to her, then she quickly walked over and opened the wardrobe with both hands. Nothing happened. At this time, she seemed to be relieved and her body relaxed. Suddenly, Xiaoxi's eyes seemed to have seen something and couldn't move away. She stood there petrified. After a while, she trembled and reached out her hand. That's my son's underwear from before. It's not for girls, Xiaoxi, you can use mine. Unexpectedly, Auntie Rin appeared at the door at this time. Xiaoxi. Xiaoxi slammed the wardrobe shut, lowered her head, grabbed the change of clothes from Auntie Ren's hand, and rushed out of the room. That's to the kitchen, the bathroom is here. Xiaoxi lowered her head again and walked past Auntie Rin. I'll teach you how to use the water heater. I just need cold water, I'm used to it. Xiaoxi closed the door and then turned on the shower without saying anything. The cold water splashed on Xiaoxi's body, as if the heat in her body slowly faded away. Only then did she let out a long sigh. What am I doing? Chapter 1980. No, didn't I do an interview last night? It was very late after I came out, so I went back to the old house to spend the night. By the way, son, do you mind if there is one more? Ah, nothing. You heard wrong. Let's not talk about it. I have to go out now. Today's report is very important. Watch my performance. Did you see my performance yesterday? Were you shocked by me? Damn it, I hung up again. Mumbling. She covered her phone and mumbled, as if she was afraid of waking up Lizzie and old Q who were sleeping on the floor in the living room. Auntie Rin scratched her messy hair and sniffed her fingers, then moved away with a disgusted look. She pushed the door open, then carefully opened the door of another room, opening a little. Cici was sleeping very soundly in the room at this time. Xiaoxi's whole body was curled up in the quilt, her legs clamped the quilt and pillow. Ren Xiling thought this was a manifestation of insecurity. She hoped this child was having a good dream. She didn't want to wake Xiaoxi up at this time, so she gently woke up old Q and Lizzie, then wrote a note and put it on the floor in front of the door. The few of them left the house as soon as dawn broke. Sister Rin, aren't you afraid of leaving this little girl at home? Auntie Rin yawned at this time. There are old neighbors nearby. When I went out, I greeted several neighbors I knew before. There is a bun shop downstairs, so I also greeted it. Its second-generation leader will send some food upstairs when the restaurant is open. I'll leave some notes for Cici. She's just a junior high school dropout. She's not illiterate. Don't worry, maybe she's better at taking care of herself than you are. Since I met Sister Ren, I feel that the happiest thing in the world is to be your giant baby. Lizzie said with great ambition. But Lizzie's chest was only the size of a pear, so she didn't have much momentum, which made old Q, who was driving in the front, snicker. The interview car drove slowly to the summit meeting venue. Little she yawned, grabbed her messy hair and got up. She even sniffed her fingers. I washed my hair when I showered last night. It's not greasy, not dirty, not even dandruff. Perfect. At home. Bah, there was no movement in the house. Those guys should have gone out and were probably on their way to the venue. Little she stretched herself and then glanced at the battlefield last night. It was really like a battlefield. For the entire night, she silently agreed that a certain profiteer might suddenly appear in the middle of the night to ambush her. She endured all the way until dawn, when she was so sleepy that she fell asleep. Just like that, they spent the night on this bed. At this time, Xiaoxi seemed to have lost her soul. She stared blankly at the golden light of the rising sun outside the window, feeling as if her life had reached a new level. I also slept on a man's bed for a night. However, her absent-minded state did not last for long. Instead, her subtle mood was quickly ruined by a thought that suddenly intruded into her mind. She was just sleeping on a bed that had been left empty for a few years. But who knows, they might sleep together every day. Tonight you're so beautiful. Master, you're so bad. Be gentler. Probably so. Bitch. Go to hell. Little she suddenly stood up, stomped on the pillow that she had hugged for the whole night, and finally performed a set of baseball punches on the pillow before she calmed down a little. At this time, something suddenly knocked on the old wooden glass window. Little she looked over expressionlessly and saw an owl squatting outside the window. She opened the window frame and the owl flew in at once. It turned out that the owl was holding a small basket in its claws. There was a mobile phone, keys, wallet, and other things on the basket. The owl directly put the basket on the desk in the room, and then said in human language, "Lord Long, you asked me to keep these things." Little she nodded, reached out and gently patted the owl's head. She grabbed the owl's head tightly as if she was rewarding it, and said with a smile, "Well done. But, how long have you been here?" I didn't see anything. I'm blind during the day." Blind. Little she snorted at this time and stopped talking. She picked up the mobile phone and looked at all kinds of messages. After a while, the owl slowly said, "By the way, Lord Long, Housie asked me to ask you that his performance last night was not up to standard. Can you give him a drumstick or something? In fact, it's mainly because Housie's eldest son is about to get married. He wants to make some money and buy something." "Lord Long?" Little she said casually, "Ask Housie to find the people from the administration. Tell them it's my idea to arrange a small 2-bedroom house in the city." The owl was overjoyed and thanked her repeatedly. "Lord Long, if there's nothing else, I'll go home. It's not safe in the city. I'm afraid I'll be shot down. There are many naughty kids outside, and several stones were thrown at me on my way here." Little she waved her hand. "Go. Wait, remember these things. No matter who asks, don't tell anyone. You know what the consequences of offending me are." The owl immediately nodded in fear, and then flew out of the window. Little she picked up the phone again. After a while, "Sister Long, where did you go last night? Why didn't you come back last night? You've been on the phone for a day and a night. I saw a lot of people messaging you. Hey, why does your voice sound weird, like you're much younger? Damn it, was I old before? No, forget it, I have something to talk to you about. Come over here." Little she immediately said quickly, "You should know the address. It's near the bun shop where you used to work. Come quickly." "Huh? What, you're not going to attend today? Maybe tomorrow? Because I asked you to bring up the Monster Special Zone proposal on the last day of the meeting. What does this have to do with you not attending? Well, what else can I say? But Lord Long, are you okay? Why does your voice sound weird, like you're much younger?" "Old man, you're King dead." The last thing Fire Cloud Evil God heard was a dragon's roar. He suddenly shivered and looked at the phone screen that had been cut off. After a while, Fire Cloud Evil God opened his mouth with a dumbfounded expression. He then shook his head, put on an eye mask, and lay down to sleep. Back to yesterday. Kelowna Administration, Headquarter Base, First Research Institute. In the following surgery, in addition to a few national-level surgeons, Dr. Zhao also participated in the whole process. As for Ms. Tao, she held Yen Xiaoxi's hand the whole time so that she could immediately perform superpower treatment on her in case of an accident. Yen Xiaoxi was more stubborn and did not even ask for anesthesia. Xiaoxi, before we start, I have to say it again, Dr. Zhao said solemnly. Although this thing is theoretically possible, it's all just a theory. After it's completely implanted in your brain and connected to your brain nerves, I can't predict what will happen. The best result is naturally the one we calculated, but there are bound to be many uncertainties. Do you want to reconsider? Let's start. Section Chief Yen said calmly. I've arranged a flight to the City of Exclusion at night. I don't want to miss the time. Dr. Zhao could only smile bitterly. He then took a deep breath and signaled the surgeons to start. In the operating room, which was also the research and observation room, Jiang Zuo was monitoring all the instruments throughout the whole process. It was difficult for ordinary people to do this kind of work, but as a cultivator, he had a far superior sense of touch. Therefore, he could report all the information at the fastest speed, which was very suitable for this kind of work. Heart rate normal, blood pressure normal. Through special surgery, the cloak was connected to Yen Xiaoxi's nerves bit by bit. At this time, Yen Xiaoxi's mind was still clear, but beads of sweat had already appeared on her forehead. She took a deep breath and directly closed her eyes. Under this terrible pain, she directly entered the state of meditation. Good fellow, we're still in the middle of an operation and you're using the pain of the operation to train your state of mind. Madame Tao, who was holding Yen Xiaoxi's hand, couldn't help but be shocked and frightened at this time. She smiled bitterly and said, Everyone says that Tu Kai is a martial arts fanatic like the old man, but I think you're the craziest one among his disciples. Heart rate is increasing, blood pressure is soaring. Suddenly, Jiang's rapid voice sounded in the operating room. The doctors who were under great pressure suddenly stopped in horror. What are you waiting for? Continue. With Madame Tao here, Xiaoxi won't die. Dr. Zhao said at this time, What you can do is to complete this operation as soon as possible and release him from the pain. Doctor, you cut Section Chief's carotid artery? Jiang's was suddenly screamed. Old godmother? Old godmother, hurry! Hurry! I'm right now. Right now. How many times have I told you, don't call me old godmother? Section Chief Yen didn't know what a group of people was doing to his body at this time. It was impossible for him to know, because at this time, not only had his consciousness sunk into the depths of his heart, but it also seemed to have been dragged into a huge whirlpool. It was as if his consciousness had been crushed by a huge black hole. After being crushed into countless fragments, it was recombined. After such an incalculable repetition, his consciousness was spat out from the huge black hole at its heaviest. He seemed to have come to the other side of the huge black hole. He saw a bizarre and variegated world. Everything at this moment was beyond all his knowledge. The girl smiled as she pointed at the ground, and countless golden wheat began to grow on the ground. The woman who was cooking just snapped her fingers, and in an instant, a table full of sumptuous food appeared out of thin air. Some people murmured something after being touched, and the wound was healed. Some people made huge ice sculptures stand up in the sea. Some people changed the weather, and made the sky rain heavily just to fill the swimming pool at home. Some people suddenly turned into an eagle, and then the eagle slowly expanded and turned into metal, and finally became a huge fighter plane. The fighter plane could even transform into a huge robot that could stand up. And some people, it was like a world of gods. Suddenly, it seemed to have been fixed in a hollow ball made of countless complicated bronze threads. He even heard something. Outside the hollow sphere, there were two godlike handsome men dressed in long robes, one in gold and one in silver. They were talking about something. The handsome man in the gold robe said excitedly, "It's a success! Myriad essence or mother. Cicero, look. The myriad essence or mother, that is comparable to the surface-level source, was born from my hands." The silver-robed man said calmly, "Yes, congratulations, Prince Desolate, your efforts were not in vain. With it, can be used. Origin capture. Finally, I will surpass my brother. Prince Desolate, the Crown Prince has always been Cicero. Prince Desolate, the Crown Prince, who is it?" He wanted to find out, but the conversation was gradually interrupted. At this moment, the man in the silver robe outside the hollow ball suddenly looked into the hollow ball. Yen Xiaoxi's consciousness made eye contact with the man in the silver robe named Cicero. The man in the silver robe's lips moved slightly, as if he was saying something. All of a sudden, Yen Xiaoxi seemed to be able to read his lips. "You shouldn't be here." As if that was what he was saying. In an instant, Section Chief Yen experienced the pain of being swallowed by a huge black hole again, repeatedly. In the end, he lost all of his consciousness. In the operating theater, Yen Xiaoxi sat up abruptly while shrieking in horror. He took deep breaths and began to focus. Yen Xiaoxi stared at the various syringes that had been inserted into her body. She then looked up and instinctively scanned her surroundings. "Oh my God! Xiaoxi, you're finally awake." Dr. Zhao hugged him without hesitation. "Do you know that you've been unconscious for a day and a night? No matter what we did, we couldn't wake you up." Section Chief Yen rubbed his swollen head and suddenly thought of something. He reached out to touch the back of his neck. "Surgery?" Section Chief Yen, the surgery was very successful, although the process was a little dangerous. Jiang Zhua stepped forward to report the good news. "If it weren't for Lao Ganma here, you would have been killed by Dr. Zhao's scissors." Was the surgery successful? Section Chief Yen lowered his head. Everything that he experienced when he was unconscious seemed to be a broken dream. He tried hard to recall something, but only a vague impression. He could only remember the intermittent conversation between the man in the gold robe and the man in the silver robe, as well as the man in the silver robe's last gaze. As for his consciousness in that bizarre and magical world, he didn't remember anything. Xiaoxi? Dr. Zhao's voice pulled Yen Xiaoxi back to reality. He subconsciously frowned. "What? I'm the one asking you. What are you thinking about?" Dr. Zhao asked in bewilderment. "You felt that something was amiss after you woke up. Are you feeling unwell?" "No. I'm just curious. Since the surgery was successful, I don't seem to feel any changes in my body. I'd like to test the effects of the cloak." "Arrange a laboratory for me," Yen Xiaoxi said solemnly. "Arrange it." Chapter 1981. They arrived much later than planned, but they should be able to make it before the start of the summit meeting on the fourth day. This time, they boarded a small private jet. Since the Kelowna administration had plenty of resources, it wasn't difficult for them to obtain such a plane. Basically, Section Chief Yen rushed to the airport immediately after leaving the experimental site. Professor Zhao and Jiang Zhua also tagged along. They had to stay by Yen Xiaoxi's side at all times and observe the changes in her body every day in order to obtain more experimental data. Although the operation this time was successful, the power of the biomass gear didn't reach our expectations. Besides, it's very taxing on your physical and mental strength. On the plane, Dr. Zhao showed Yen Xiaoxi some of the data after the implantation. "This is the six-dimensional image of your normal state. This is the result after the biomass gear. It's obvious that your intelligence can't be increased." Dr. Zhao adjusted his glasses and said embarrassedly, "What I mean is, your intelligence is actually enough." Yen Xiaoxi glowered at Dr. Zhao expressionlessly before taking the data from him and reading it herself. There's indeed a huge increase in attack and defense. Yan Xiaoxi muttered. During the test, I felt that the power of my full-powered punch had increased by more than 5 times. It's far from 6 times. This doesn't match what you said about the increase of hundreds of times. Professor Zhao smiled bitterly and said, Brother, everything has its physical limits. A slap can kill a mosquito and an atomic bomb can kill a mosquito. However, a slap can't turn into an atomic bomb, right? Even if the mosquito is dead, it wouldn't care if it was slapped to death or bombed to death, right? What a lousy analogy. Yan Xiaoxi shook her head. However, the increase in strength under the biomass gear was already a huge surprise. Although it was at the level of a martial artist, in terms of combat power, it was already a huge improvement. Are you planning to mass-produce this? Yan Xiaoxi suddenly asked. After a moment of silence, Professor Zhao said, I've temporarily asked Ms. Tao to keep this experiment a secret. What's the reason? Yan Xiaoxi asked with a frown. Professor Zhao said, We don't know if there will be any side effects after the biomass gear, so we need to observe for a period of time. Yan Xiaoxi asked again, What's your reason? Dr. Zhao could only helplessly say, You know, there are some people above who don't listen to advice. They only see the power of the biomass gear. So, this research, to be honest, I didn't report it at all. Yan Xiaoxi fell silent. It was rather quiet in the cabin. After a while, Yan Xiaoxi suddenly said, Old Zhao, you said that this essence or might be some kind of life form. It's alive. Do you think it has its own thoughts and memories? Why are you asking this? Dr. Zhao could not help but ask in surprise. Answer me first. Professor Zhao thought about it and said, It's not impossible. Maybe it's just that with our current detection methods, there's no way to detect its thoughts. Why? Could it be that you felt something through this operation? At this moment, Yan Xiaoxi rubbed the back of her neck and said casually, Nothing much, I just feel like there's something extra in my body. That's why I couldn't help but think about it. If you can really feel anything, remember to tell me immediately. Dr. Zhao was rather excited at this moment. Perhaps this will be very helpful for future research. Definitely. Section Chief Yan nodded absent-mindedly and immediately looked out of the window. However, at this moment, Yan Xiaoxi was suddenly taken aback, and even her whole body tensed up. It was because through the small window, Yan Xiaoxi actually saw the face of a ghoul, or rather, the face of a guy who was wearing a black metal ghoul mask. At this moment, the other party appeared outside the plane and was on the flight path in the sky. What's this? Dr. Zhao exclaimed. Then, a loud noise was heard. The guy wearing a black devil mask outside had actually broken through the deck of the plane with a single blow. In an instant, the huge air pressure difference caused a strong gust of wind to form in the cabin. Everyone in the cabin was instantly thrown up. However, the attacker wearing a black devil mask in outer space actually resisted the terrifying suction force and grabbed the large hole in the cockpit deck with one hand and directly flipped into the cockpit. Section Chief Yan suddenly held his breath, and at the same time, the true power in his body vibrated, and he used the suction formula in martial arts. At the same time, with the help of the safety buckle, his body was firmly pressed against the seat. At the same time, he pressed down on Dr. Zhao, who was blown up with one hand. As for the people who had the fortuitous encounter, he could not take care of them for the time being. Facing the guy wearing a black ghoul mask who broke in at this time, Section Chief Yan threw a punch without hesitation, trying to blast the other party out of the plane 10,000 meters high. However, this hasty punch was directly blocked by the guy wearing a black ghoul mask with his palm. The other party even held Yan Xiaoxi's fist tightly with his palm. Section Chief Yan could not even withdraw his hand for a moment. That's it? At this time, a hoarse and low voice was still clearly heard by Yan Xiaoxi's ears. I heard that you've completed some special operation and your strength has improved a lot. At this time, A glint flashed across Yen Xiaoxi's eyes. In this urgent situation, he could not care too much. The moment he concentrated, a huge explosive force suddenly erupted from Yen Xiaoxi's fist that was held by the black ghoul mask, and it forcibly blasted the palm of the man wearing a black ghoul mask away. At this time, a silver-gray keratin started to appear from Section Chief Yan's tightly clenched fist. Like a silver-gray armor, it covered Yen Xiaoxi's arm little by little. However, at this moment, the hand of the man wearing a black ghoul mask who was blasted away by the explosive force appeared again silently and directly held Yen Xiaoxi's wrist. In an instant, a huge and scorching true power of the martial artist was directly poured into Yen Xiaoxi's body through the contact point. The huge and scorching heat instantly made Yen Xiaoxi feel like he was being roasted by flames. It should be powerful, but it's a pity that the speed is too slow. Or rather, you haven't had time to practice it. At this time, the man wearing a black ghoul mask said indifferently, but you'll have a chance in the future. At this time, Yen Xiaoxi's other hand had to protect Dr. Zhao. At this time, under the pain of being roasted by flames, seeing that Dr. Zhao was already having difficulty breathing, the anger in his heart suddenly soared. All of a sudden, the sound of a bug chirping could be heard in his mind, and it was getting louder and louder. It was as if thousands of cicadas were singing at the same time on a summer day. Yen Xiaoxi could not help but shriek in agony. At this time, at the rear of the cabin, the light of thunder and fire suddenly lit up. At this time, Jiang's legs were clamped on the seat, and his whole body was horizontally with the strength of his waist. At this time, Jiang Zuo was holding an iron sword that was the length of a small arm, and then, he released his palm, and the iron sword was seen instantly shooting out. The iron sword flew out and directly pierced the throat of the man wearing a black ghoul mask. Ding! However, at the moment when the iron sword pierced the throat of the man, it unexpectedly made a sound like piercing metal. The iron sword was not only ineffective, but also directly shattered because of the impact of the iron sword. Suddenly, Jiang's eyes were suddenly filled with horror, only to see the man wearing a ghoul mask looking at him. That gaze was like the power of the heavens, directly shaking Jiang's mind, and a mouthful of blood instantly spouted out from his heart. "You're not good at learning," the man wearing a black ghoul mask said indifferently. At this time, a strange, even with a trace of ominous aura, suddenly burst out from Yen Xiaoxi's body, and the man wearing a black ghoul mask subconsciously looked at him. Unknowingly, Yen Xiaoxi's body was already covered with a large part of silver-gray horniness. This horniness was not systematic, but it could be vaguely seen that after it was completely covered, it should be like an armor. At this time, Section Chief Yan's pair of eyes completely turned black. A black true power even surged out from his body. In an instant, the body of the man wearing a black ghoul mask was directly knocked out of the cabin by this black true power. His body suddenly fell into the 10,000 meters high altitude without support, falling. This is a bit interesting. During the fall, the body of the man wearing a ghoul mask suddenly stopped, and then forcibly reversed the fall. His body turned into a stream of light, and once again crashed into the cabin, from the other side. At this time, there was more silver horniness on Yen Xiaoxi's body. It covered almost 70% of her body. Facing the second attack of the man wearing a black ghoul mask, Section Chief Yan's body at this time disappeared in a flash, as if he had turned into a black fog, disappearing in an instant. The next moment, the black fog appeared in front of the man wearing a ghoul mask, as if it had teleported in an instant. Yen Xiaoxi appeared again, and punched the brain of the man wearing a ghoul mask. The man wearing a ghoul mask raised his hand to block. In an instant, a shock wave appeared from the place where he blocked, and actually forcibly swept away the originally stirred-up wind in the cabin. "Really not bad," the man wearing a ghoul mask said, as if he was very appreciative. At this time, Section Chief Yan's fist, or in other words, on the horniness of his fist, a sharp blade suddenly shot out in an instant. In a flash, a cold light flashed in the eyes of the man wearing a black ghoul mask at the same time. A light golden sword light pierced through the plane in an instant. In the end, the small plane was directly cut into two halves by this sword light. The small plane was directly cut into two halves in the air. At the place where it was cut, the wind was even stronger. At this time, the man wearing a ghoul mask was holding Yen Xiaoxi with one hand and Dr. Zhao's collar with the other hand. The ghoul mask on his face was already broken in half, and the half-broken ghoul mask on his face finally couldn't withstand the wind and completely fell off. "It's you, Gongsun. Sure, still not unconscious?" The man wearing a ghoul mask. Gongsun Xiu looked down and said indifferently, as expected of Fire Cloud's disciple. After saying that, Gongsun Xiu directly jumped out of the broken cabin and disappeared among the white clouds, and this small plane was also half destroyed after that. The other half continued to fall, and not long after, it crashed into the mountain. At this time, Fire Cloud Evil God was sitting in front of the table with a newspaper spread open. In the open kitchen of the suite, the eldest disciple, Tu Kai, was currently wearing a pink apron. He was frying something while muttering, "Master, you're eating such greasy food so early in the morning. Can you take it? Why are you talking so much nonsense? It's not done yet. You want to starve your master to death." The god-shocking spear Tu Kai immediately rolled his eyes and shook his head. "If I knew it was so boring, I would have accompanied junior brother to the capital city. There's no fight here anyway. TSK. Letting you stay by your master's side and take care of him for a few days. It's not fair for you, right?" The old man directly snorted. "It's easy to fight. After dinner, I'll accompany you to the suburbs to practice." After saying that, Fire Cloud Evil God with a look of disdain reached for the cup of milk next to him. But for some reason, the cup didn't touch and was even knocked down. Seeing that the cup was about to fall to the ground and break, Fire Cloud Evil God suddenly reached out and firmly caught the cup. Bang! At this moment, the door of the room was suddenly knocked open, and an agent on duty at this moment said with a panicked look, "Consultant. Section Chief Yan's plane was attacked by unknown forces and crashed. Section Chief and Dr. Zhao are missing, the employees of Jiangzuo were seriously injured, and the 5 people accompanying them were all killed on the spot." Bang! The cup in Fire Cloud Evil God's hand suddenly fell and broke into pieces on the ground. In an instant, Tu Kai directly threw away the spatula, picked up the spear next to the refrigerator, and walked out without saying anything. "Wait, where are you going?" Fire Cloud Evil God suddenly shouted. "To find Xiaoxi." "Where to find him? Didn't you hear that he's missing? Do you know where he is now?" Fire Cloud Evil God said in a low voice. Tu Kai frowned. "Can't I do nothing?" "Wait." Fire Cloud Evil God at this moment slowly exhaled. "Xiaoxi wasn't killed on the spot, he's missing. Either he had escaped with Professor Zhao, or he had been kidnapped. If he had escaped, he would have asked for help immediately. If he had been captured, the other party would naturally come knocking on his door. What's the use of you running around like a madman?" "Bastard!" Tu Kai shouted angrily, and the spear in his hand pierced through the refrigerator beside him. Fortunately, this was the Forbidden Land, otherwise, this floor would probably be pierced through by Tu Kai's spear. The agent at the side subconsciously swallowed his saliva and thought at this moment. "Calm down." Fire Cloud Evil God said indifferently, "Go and prepare, the meeting is about to begin. Grand Duke, the car is ready, we're about to leave for the meeting." In one of the reception hotels for the Transcendent delegation, a pale-faced young man looked humbly at the new Grand Duke of the clan in front of him and said, "Then let's go." Beilegan nodded. "Go out for a while, I'll come after preparing." "Okay." After the young man left, Beilegan looked in the mirror and tidied up his sleeves. Suddenly, Beilegan said indifferently, "Coming to find me so early in the morning, don't tell me you want to treat me to breakfast." At the partition, a figure flipped out and immediately threw a crystal bottle to Beilegan. After Beilegan received it, He didn't open it to look carefully, but smiled slightly and said, "You really dare to come out and wander around? The people of the Kelowna administration are probably looking for you all over the world." Gongsun Jishui. The figure that walked out was a young man with a broken palm with a cold expression. Chapter 1982. Bailgang was still tidying up his clothes. He didn't even ask how Gongsun Jishui avoided the guards downstairs. Gongsun Jishui said directly, "In today's meeting, the 13 clans may become the target of attack. It seems that there are many opponents in the inhuman domain. They are against the Wu farm you have built, and some even want to liberate all the Wu farms." Then, Bailgang responded casually. Gongsun Jishui said indifferently, "Your 13 clans may not have a good time in the inhuman domain. What are you going to do?" Bailgang turned around and chuckled. "Are you worried about me, or is the one behind you worried about me? If it is the one behind you, I don't think he will be so easily worried about others, right?" Gongsun Jishui frowned and said coldly, "We will have an action soon." Bailgang said indifferently, "I don't think I need to cooperate with you." Gongsun Jishui said indifferently, "Paradise Island is destroyed. The fool is suspected to have died yesterday." Bailgang's expression didn't change, but his eyes didn't seem to be calm. After a long silence, he slowly said, "What do you want to do?" Gongsun Jishui said, "It's not what we want to do, but what you need to do. 26 Lords. The new world should be born soon." "That's not a good name." Bailgang shook his head. "If there is nothing important, please go back. Although I am lazy, I don't want to be late for the morning meeting. The 13 clans are already in a difficult situation. It's not good to be late and become the target of arrows." Gongsun Jishui just looked at Bailgang expressionlessly and then stepped back. Then, "See you later." After a while, Bailgang dressed neatly and walked out of the room. The people who followed him immediately stepped forward. Bailgang suddenly smiled and said, "Do you think I can use a scarecrow to attend the meeting instead of myself?" The young man was stunned. It was rumored that the new Grand Duke used to play this trick. When the people were halfway through the meeting, they found out it was a scarecrow dummy. "Grand Duke, this is not very good, right?" The young man hesitated. "Just kidding." Bailgang smiled and said, "Why are you being so serious? Besides, the straw dummy has improved." He had a feeling that this new Grand Duke of the clan was actually serious. Wearing a pointy nightcap and spotted pajamas, in the spacious bedroom, oh God, Mr. G. Ba's upper body was hanging on the side of the bed. Miraculously, he didn't fall down from the bed, which could be called a godly skill. But at this moment, a small foot mercilessly kicked Mr. G. Ba's body, sending him to the ground. What's going on? Man of God, Mr. G. Ba was shocked. Without saying anything, he hurriedly got up and fumbled under the pillow, but he didn't seem to find what he wanted. At this moment, something seemed to be pressed against the back of his head. "Bucky, are you looking for this?" When he heard this voice, Deity Kiba, Mr. Buggy knew it was going to be bad. Don't think that because it's a nice girl's voice you can bully, it's a girl's voice. This girl is actually as scary as a demon. "Lucy, this is not a fun toy, put it down first." Bucky quickly begged for mercy. He looked at the little girl in front of him. The black pistol in the little girl's hand was the scariest. At this moment, the little girl suddenly pulled the trigger, and a "Kacha" sound rang out. Buggy's whole body stiffened. He was scared out of his wits, and his heart almost stopped. But soon, he realized that it was an empty shot. The little girl narrowed her eyes and chuckled cheerfully. "Breakfast is ready, come out and eat." With that said, the little girl casually threw the black pistol in her hand to Buggy and walked out of the room with a happy face. After a while, Bucky suddenly shuddered. He hurriedly ran to the door and locked it. Then he nervously ran to the window, lifted the mattress, and pried open the bedboard. Seeing a pad inside, he breathed a sigh of relief. Buggy quickly stuffed the pad that was hidden here into his arms and covered it tightly. Then, he sneakily ran into the bathroom and prepared to wash up. Except for sleeping time, he would definitely carry this pad with him, at all times. He only had this sense of security left since the day Lucy, this demonic girl, appeared in front of him. No, she's a demon through and through. She's the queen of hell, Lucifer. Don't be fooled by her cute appearance. Bucky, who was brushing his teeth, suddenly said, and then, he accidentally swallowed the toothpaste foam, causing him to cough repeatedly. Fortunately, he didn't pass out. Why am I so unlucky? Bucky sat on the toilet and couldn't help but ponder. He originally thought that after possessing the artifact PAD, he would be able to walk on the path of life. However, in the early days of the founding of God's sect, Lucifer suddenly appeared in front of him in the appearance of a little girl. He didn't know what method she used to make the believers in his sect believe that she was a messenger sent by another god. Half of the meeting, Lucifer, this demon, appeared and took half of his sect. Not half. Bucky's face was gloomy as he held his chin with both hands. His face was flushed as he thought indignantly, since Lucifer appeared again, he, who was the Pope of God's sect, had been reduced to a slave behind his back. I don't even know what method she used to know that I have the artifact PAD. If it weren't for the fact that this artifact pad was bound to me and no one else could use it except me, perhaps my body would have already decomposed in the sewers? She can do it. Lucifer, the queen of hell, can definitely do this kind of thing. Bucky suddenly became angry and waved his hand. The sound of the toilet flushing was heard. In the living room outside the room, Lucifer, who looked like a little girl, was elegantly eating with a knife and fork. It was just that her legs were short, so her legs could only hang in the air. She was only a little girl right now, and this place was a forbidden zone. Could it be possible to kill the Queen of Hell right here? Bucky, who had just walked out, suddenly had such a thought in his mind. Like an evil thought, it suddenly made Bucky feel like he was possessed, and his breathing couldn't help but quicken. Bucky, I know you are a scumbag. At this moment, Lucifer looked over with a smile, but I didn't expect that you would be interested in a little girl's legs. Bucky's heart suddenly quivered, and that trace of evil thoughts disappeared without a trace. He sat down without saying anything. The evil thought in his heart disappeared, not only because of Lucifer's sudden words, but more importantly, Lucifer was not alone. There was always a long-haired beautiful woman beside Lucifer. Bucky admitted that he was very greedy for this tall, beautiful woman's body, especially her long legs. However, this pair of long legs could easily kick over a heavy truck. How high was Skaha's strength? Bucky still didn't have a rough idea in his heart. Half a year ago, he was just a semi-retired gang leader who only wanted to live a carefree life. He didn't have any ambition and was just a half-retired gang leader. Your breakfast, Mr. Bucky. At this time, Skaha put a plate in front of Bucky. He looked down and couldn't help but frown. What is this? Asparagus, spinach, and tomato slices, Skaha said indifferently. I know, Bucky said in a deep voice, but why is there no meat? He had to eat meat every day. The delicious meat that was exchanged from the artifact PAD. Part of the faith units that he had been collecting was consumed on this kind of food. The desire for this kind of meat was like an addiction. If he didn't eat it for a day, he would feel uncomfortable all over. However, meat like the City of Forbidden couldn't be exchanged through the artifact PAD. Bucky was like a person who was forced to quit smoking at this time. The main reason was that the addiction was hard to stop. He thought that even if he couldn't eat that kind of meat, ordinary meat could more or less replace it, right? But during this time, Skaha, who was in charge of 3 meals, made this kind of vegetarian food every day, which was simply tragic. Vegetarian food is better for your body. The Queen of Shadow Country said indifferently, your body is too greasy, and so is your character. Eat more fresh food to wash your whole body. You want me to eat grass? I'd rather die and jump down from here. Bucky pushed the plate away directly. Skaha didn't care at this time. He touched a plate of salad, sat down, and lowered his head to eat silently. At this time, Lucifer drank a mouthful of milk, licked the milky white residue on his lips, then narrowed his eyes and said, "If you don't want to eat breakfast, then get ready to go out. Do you remember what you are going to do today?" Bucky rolled his eyes and recited, "Today, I have to fight for the legalization of the church in the South American continent. I don't ask to be on an equal footing with the church, but at least I have to make the church uncomfortable. Then, I will point at Father Stella of the church and say that he is an idiot. Why do I have to point at him and say that he is an idiot? Because I like it." Lucifer shrugged and said, "That's all." F***CKU. Bucky couldn't help but shake his head and stared at Lucifer suspiciously, saying, "Think about it carefully. Do you really want to snatch territory from the church? Don't forget, Rio is the city of God, and more than 80% of the people are believers of God. You are the queen of hell, and I am a fraud. How can we snatch other people's territory?" Lucifer smiled and said, "You are belittling yourself. You are the great God, and you can bring the dead back to life. You perform miracles every day, and it is easy for you to steal their faith. If you really can't do it, you can use some hallucinogenic drugs. Isn't this the most common method used by gangsters like you?" Bucky immediately cursed. "Are you planning to run my church like a gangster?" Lucifer said indifferently, "Anyway, gangsters can take over the government in your country. What's so strange about that? Churches, parties, and even countries, what's the difference between them and gangsters? One is nicer, and the other is more powerful." "You can't say that." Buggy frowned and subconsciously picked up a piece of asparagus with his fork and stuffed it into his mouth. As he chewed, he thought, "But the church is strong and powerful, and our church has only been established for less than half a year. How can we make the church give in? They won't agree. As for the other supernatural organizations, they won't let our church grow. Territory is obtained by snatching." Lucifer shrugged and said, "The church spread to the world through invasion, and I have a different opinion from you. Maybe the other supernatural organizations will not only not stop you from snatching territory, but also secretly help you." "How is that possible?" Bucky had a look of disbelief. After finishing the asparagus, he could only fork the tomatoes. He was really not interested in spinach. Lucifer, however, narrowed his eyes and said, "Why, don't you want your territory to be bigger, and then you can harvest more faith? This way you can exchange more things, and they will be more useful. Maybe, when you have accumulated to a certain extent, you can buy better services. For example, maybe you can let me serve you once. You have seen the existence of his. You don't doubt that this can be done, right?" Subconsciously looking at the Queen of Hell who looked like a porcelain doll in front of him, Bucky suddenly thought of the sexy and hot body of Lucifer's main body. This time, he couldn't help but swallow the spinach that he hated the most. After drinking a whole cup of water, he swallowed his saliva and said with an embarrassed smile, "You must be joking. How would I dare to blaspheme you?" Suddenly, Bucky seemed to have reacted, and his face was full of horror. You know," Lucifer said indifferently at this time, "a machine that can be exchanged for anything, as long as there are enough faith units. It is not a problem to exchange for the entire world. I don't think such a divine artifact can be picked up by accident, right?" With that said, Lucifer jumped down from the chair and walked slowly to Bucky. Bucky looked at her in horror. Lucifer stretched out her small hand at this time and suddenly tapped on Bucky's abdomen a few times. After making a gurgling sound, she said with a smile, "Then, I will see your performance today, the great God, Mr. G. Ba. Damn it. Even if I carry it with me, it's still not safe. The only sense of security is gone. F***CK. Miss Wren. Miss Wren, this way please. Inspection? There is no need to inspect, I can exempt you from this today." Renziling looked at the 4 agents of the administration who appeared in front of her with a puzzled expression. They were in the parking lot and they had just gotten off the bus. At first, Aunt Rin thought that because she asked the Prince of Undersea City yesterday, she was going to be punished today, but looking at the 4 agents of the administration who were respectful at this time, Aunt Rin couldn't help but hesitate. These guys, did they take the wrong medicine? Maybe it's because Sister Wren's performance was too good yesterday, and then some big boss took a fancy to you, so he took special care of you? Lizzie used her imagination that she trained from watching idle dramas when she was bored while eating snacks. Next, some overbearing president will appear in front of you, and then push you down? Then her head was knocked hard by Aunt Rin, and then Aunt Rin climbed into the interview car in an instant. Lizzie, who was holding her head, couldn't help but feel wronged. What are you doing? Touching up my makeup. Aunt Rin looked at the small mirror and said, Without you, my sweetheart, to put on makeup for me today, I feel like there's no biling effect. Lizzie shook her head. She had to look at the 4 waiting agents of the administration awkwardly, and tentatively said, Can you wait for a while? It's okay as long as it takes. They showed their white teeth at the same time and said with a smile. It could be said that their service attitude today was far beyond their peers. This is Shinryu's godmother? This is Shinryu's mother. This is, in fact, they thought so. Chapter 1983. This was indeed something that Kelowna Shinryu didn't expect when she said it. In fact, it wasn't that she hadn't thought about it after the incident, but she never thought that it would spread so quickly. In less than half an hour, basically all the reputable and experienced groups in the agency had already known about it. There was a thing called work group, and there was a group of people called porters lurking in the work group. So it exploded. Fortunately, the evil god of the fire cloud reacted quickly and issued a gag order, preventing this matter from spreading to the grassroots. But even the evil god of the fire cloud, who had authority in the agency, was no match for an enemy. Let me tell you, don't tell anyone. This enemy. Why do I feel like we've moved forward a little more? Boss, we were originally in the first row, where else can we move? Ren Xiling nodded subconsciously and immediately looked at Lizzie. What are you looking at? She found that Lizzie was staring at something at this time. It was something that was placed in the small drawer in front of their seats. It seemed to be something like a list. Sister Ren, we can order at noon. We don't have to eat box lunch. Lizzie's eyes lit up. What is this jade, white jade? And this boiled cabbage looks cheap? What is Wensi tofu? Damn. Auntie Rin was shocked at this time. She even looked at the whole venue as if she saw a ghost. She felt that someone was behind this. It was so abnormal along the way that she even felt like she was sitting on a carpet of needles. Could it be that what Lizzie said was true? That some overbearing CEO had taken a fancy to her, or had taken a fancy to Lizzie? So, Auntie Rin shivered and directly hid the menu in Lizzie's hand. She announced without saying anything, "We will continue to eat box lunch at noon. The box lunch here is delicious." Lizzie was about to cry. She didn't eat Miss Yuye's cooking yesterday. When she went back to Ren Xiling's old house last night, she didn't even have instant noodles. She only ate 2 packets of expired biscuits. They were crispy. But they weren't crispy anymore, they were soft. Stop fooling around. Auntie Ren pressed Lizzie down with one hand and then ordered old Q to set up and adjust the position of the camera. She also began to do some preparatory work before the start of the meeting. At this time, the representatives of the Transcendents began to enter the venue. Mr. Jean suddenly climbed up from the underground studio. Bibi, who was watching the shop, was surprised. Mr. Jean was going out now. Boss, are you going out now? Aren't you watching the live broadcast of the meeting? I'm listening to the live broadcast. Mr. Jean plugged in his headphones, tightened his clothes, and went out. When are you coming back? Do you want me to make your lunch? Bibi quickly asked. But Mr. Jean didn't respond. He left through the back door of the second-hand electrical shop. Bei shook his head. Just as he was about to tidy up the table, he subconsciously glanced at the half-closed door and muttered, "That Miss Nan shouldn't be coming back today, right? SAS leaves is why she didn't want to leave, S's leave, T's leave, BB knew that she was looking for a job, so he didn't care too much about it. It was normal that she didn't come today since she didn't have a chance. But at this time, the door to the basement suddenly opened, and Maeve slowly climbed out. BB curiously asked, "Maeve, are you going out too?" "There's no more drinks downstairs, so I came up to get some." Maeve frowned. "Who went out?" "Mr. Jean, you're all downstairs. Can't you see?" "I just woke up, so I didn't notice." Maeve shook her head. Then, as if she had thought of something, she looked at the calendar hanging on the wall and said thoughtfully, "So it's today." BB showed a puzzled expression. Maeve thought for a while and said, "Don't you know? Today is Mr. Jin's girlfriend's birthday, the first birthday after her death." "I see. Then, master, I'll go and prepare," Miss Maid suddenly said. Boss Luo was turning on the TV and nodded. When Miss Maid was about to take action, he suddenly stopped her and walked to her side. She waited quietly for her master's next action or words. Boss Luo reached out and picked up a thin strand of silk from Miss Maid's hair. Then he smiled. "It's done." She gave him a smile. Boss Luo waved his hand and sent Miss Maid away, out of this subworld. The next destination had been chosen. It was the place where the previous owner stayed, which was similar to the 003 subworld. Although he didn't plan to stay there for too long, it was better to choose a world with a higher degree of communication since it was his first time opening a shop outside 003 and so on. This time, Miss Maid went there to prepare the address and identity. In fact, she would be back soon, in less than half a day. Thinking of this, Boss Luo casually picked up the remote control and suddenly changed the channel. On the screen, a picture of the living room of an old house appeared, and in the living room of this old house, there was a little girl with a twisted braid. She was looking around suspiciously. "I know you're here. Come out. Peeping Tom. Tell me, did you peek at me last night?" The TV sounded. The sound was very clear. Boss Luo listened and couldn't help but smile, then changed the channel back to the live broadcast of the summit meeting. "I'm telling you. Come out now." Cece even jumped onto the sofa and looked down at the living room, but she had been like this since Auntie Ren and the others left. Cece was probably thirsty, so she stopped yelling. As if she had been hollowed out, Cece slumped on the sofa and looked up at the slowly rotating ceiling fan, the green kind. After a long time, the doorbell suddenly rang. Cece ran to the door in a flash, glancing at the doorway before opening the door. Outside the door, Luo Dance saw that butterfly monster was looking at her mobile phone and the door number. Seeing that it was a little girl who opened the door, Luo Dance was stunned. "Sorry, I seem to have come to the wrong place. It's me. You big-breasted, brainless, trash butterfly." Cece rolled her eyes grumpily. "Oh, this tone?" Luo Dance opened her eyes wide in disbelief. "You are, yes. It's me." Cece directly opened the door and said grumpily, "Sister Long." Luo Dance was more surprised at this time, then she blinked and said, "What are you doing? How did you become like this? And, I remember this place seems to belong to the boss? You know this house belongs to the profiteer?" Cece. Kelowna's Shinryu frowned at this moment, looking at the big ferocious butterfly vigilantly. "Yes." Luo Dance nodded. "When I worked in the bun shop downstairs, the boss occasionally came back to buy breakfast. He would talk about it when we were chatting, but he didn't tell me." "Why haven't I heard you mention it before?" Kelowna's Shinryu narrowed her eyes at this time. She felt that Sister Long's tone was a bit strange. Luo Dance couldn't help being stunned and subconsciously said, "You didn't ask, and I don't think it's a very important thing. It's King mine." All of a sudden, the true dragon of the godly land had a feeling that she had miscalculated. She had been on guard against that black-hearted maid day and night. Perhaps this seemingly harmless Zhongshan butterfly had already sneaked into her house without anyone noticing? "How much do you guys still have that I don't know?" she asked directly, her tone filled with jealousy. Luo Dance hurriedly waved her hands and said, "No. I've almost told Sister Long. It was the time when she got drunk and woke up in the boss's shop. As for what she did in the shop after getting drunk, even she didn't know, let alone mention it. It seemed to be shameful to mention it." "Almost? You mean there's more?" Kelowna's Shinryu's hearing was very sensitive at this time. Luo Dance had to go over and then change the topic. "By the way, Sister Long, why are you here? And why are you in such a hurry to find me?" This morning, she was preparing breakfast for Chichikamaya and others who were about to go out, but she was called out halfway. As a result, she could only let Chichikamaya take the beaker to cook instant noodles again. Kelowna's Shinryu looked at Luo Dance meaningfully at this time, and then made way for her. "Come in first." She entered the door. Kelowna's Shinryu closed the door, and then went around to the back of the little butterfly monster. She then grabbed the little butterfly monster's head with both hands, and used her head as a scanner to scan the whole living room. Luo Dance was scared at this time. "Sister Long, what are you doing, see?" Kelowna's Shinryu said at this time, "This is your task. Before noon, clean up this place until it's biling. I'm very useful." "Huh?" 3 figures, 2 big and 1 small, wearing white robes and white pointy hats, slowly walked into the venue. One of them even yawned at this time. "Why did you come so early? Why is there no one here?" Not counting the media in the media area and the officials of the on-site management bureau, they were the first to enter the hall. "Only in this way can we record everything completely." Natsuya Suzuki yawned again at this time. "Recording every day, why does it sound like the style of a tortoise organization? What is it called, secret society? Or hermit society?" Mr. Che Tian suddenly stopped, frowning subconsciously. "What did you say?" "Sleep talking," Natsuya Suzuki said unhappily. "I have a morning temper, let me show you." His morning temper was really scary. How much did this guy know about the secret society? Even he was just a clerk of the secret society in this world, so he didn't know too much about it. When he was about to ask more, he saw Natsuya Suzuki had already sat down, and then put down the chair in front of the double-legged king, and then fell asleep. Mr. Che Tian subconsciously looked at the child next to him, only to see the child looking up at him at this time. The child's eyes seemed to reveal a message. "He is like this, don't mind him." Mr. Che Tian could only smile bitterly. Even if he did mind, there was nothing he could do. At this time, the rest of the transcendent organizations entered one after another. After Mr. Che Tian sorted out his thoughts, he also sat down. He opened a notebook, as if he was going to write something at any time. Time passed little by little. Some organizations didn't attract much attention after entering, but some organizations' entrance would attract crazy attention from the media, such as the Church, the Taoist Association, and the Magician Association. The night mechanism used to be very glorious, but after several deaths and internal strife, it had obviously fallen by a level. Mr. Gareth's heart skipped a beat on the spot. "Okay?" At this time, the media's eyes instantly focused on a certain place. Mr. Che Tian couldn't help but look over. The moment he looked over, he heard a scream of abuse. "You idiot! Bastard! Dog's hit! Trash!" Everyone was shocked. Father Stella stood expressionlessly at this time, while Knight Wasco and Sister Lavinia beside him had already turned pale with fright. They weren't angry because of such abuse, but because they were afraid of what Stella would do. At this time, the person who pointed at Stella's identity and cursed was the so-called God, Mr. G. Ba. Shocked. "What did you say? I can't hear you, say it again." Father Stella picked his ear at this time, using his little finger. "You bastard! Dog's hit! Trash!" The God, Mr. G. Ba's voice was slightly trembling, and his legs were trembling. After cursing again, he was still gasping for breath. He used the most cowardly appearance to speak arrogantly. Father Stella suddenly narrowed his eyes. Unexpectedly, after this deity, Mr. G. Ba finished scolding, he turned around, lifted his robe and ran back to his seat, as if he was speeding up. He squatted down and stuck his head out from his seat to look at the situation. Everyone was shocked again. This god, is he invited by Monkey? In the distance, Auntie Rin opened her mouth. Most of the people present at this time were like this. But at this time, they were more concerned about the reaction of Father Stella instead of why then God, Mr. G. Ba cursed. They had obviously seen the mouth of this church's priest, and it was still fresh in their memory. Look, the Magician Association's Scarlet Blaze Tower Master's face was still black. Finally, Father Stella moved, the kind that Knight Wasco and Sister Lavinia couldn't stop.